Chapter 200. Guang Yuan immediately snorted and said, "You, a mere poly-tier warrior, actually want me to be your follower?" He was a spiritual ocean tier warrior. What kind of concept was that? Above the spiritual ocean tier was the spiritual pedestal tier, and spiritual pedestal tier warriors were the strongest warriors of the 8 great clans and Rain Country royalty. In other words, in the entire Rain Country, there were only about 100 people who could firmly suppress Guang Yuan. Rain Country's population was about 100 million, and to rank in the top 100 of 100 million, that was awesome enough, right? "Change the condition," he said. "Then be my bodyguard for a year." Ling Han readily accepted. What was the difference? Guang Yuan glared and had the urge to slap someone, but thinking that Ling Han still grasped the secrets of the Big Sun Heaven Heart Scroll, he could only be patient and said, "Change the condition." "I say, Big Brother Guang, you're too picky, aren't you? It doesn't work either way." "Forget it, I can't be bothered to waste my time thinking about it." Ling Han shrugged, and was about to take Hunyo's hand and leave. He took 2 steps and turned to Guang Yuan. "Brother Guang, you're grabbing my clothes and not letting go. What's the meaning of this? Did I pull you? Which eye of yours noticed?" Guang Yuan lied through his teeth. Ling Han laughed and said, "Brother Guang means that if I don't correct the technique, you won't let me leave. If you want to leave, then leave. I'm not some bandit, how could I force you to stay here?" Guang Yuan said it openly, but one hand grabbed onto the corner of Ling Han's clothes and refused to let go. Ling Han laughed and said, "Brother Guang, you'll only be a bodyguard for a year, but in exchange for the hope of advancing into the spiritual pedestal tier, do you think this deal is a loss?" Guang Yuan frowned. "Can you really guarantee that I will break through to the spiritual pedestal tier?" For some reason, he chose to believe this young man's words. One had to know that even if he managed to resolve the hidden danger, so what? Breaking through to the spiritual pedestal tier would still be extremely difficult. How many spiritual pedestal tier cultivators were there in Rain Country? Moreover, they were all in the imperial family and the 8 great clans. Occasionally, there would be exceptions, but they would also belong to powerful parties, such as Tianyiji and Huyang University. He had never heard of any lone cultivator achieving such results. 3 suns break the heavens, Yuan lock heavy pass. Ling Han suddenly said. Guang Yuan's expression changed drastically, and he asked, "How do you know the Great Sun Heaven Heart Sutra's mnemonic chant?" "How strange. If I didn't know, how could I solve your problem?" Ling Han smiled. Guang Yuan sighed and said, "You win." This brat had always been calm and unruffled. Obviously, he was certain that he would win. "Big Brother Guang, don't be disappointed. In the future, you'll know that this is the most correct choice you've made in your life," Ling Han said with a smile. Guang Yuan shook his head, and said helplessly, "Brat, you've never been one to stay put. As your bodyguard, who knows what kind of danger I might encounter? Who knows, I might even lose my life. Don't worry. At most, there'll be a little danger. Death is impossible." Ling Han patted his shoulder. "Forget it. Since I've already decided to board your pirate ship, I won't think too much about it." Guang Yuan was a man who could take things easy and let them go. He was no longer conflicted about being Ling Han's bodyguard for a year. Ling Han said, "3 suns break the heavens, Yuan lock heavy pass." This mnemonic phrase is where the problem lies in your cultivation. In the past, I met a person who, like you, understood this sentence as locking a portion of the essence energy in the 3rd spine. This can indeed increase one's explosive power, but after a long period of time, it will cause great harm to one's body. If you continue to cultivate like this, your spine will definitely break in less than 3 years, and you will become a cripple. Guang Yuan couldn't help but be moved. For a spiritual ocean tier elite, once they lost their cultivation, it was no different from death. Moreover, his personality was eccentric, and he must have offended many people. Once he lost his cultivation, there would definitely be many people who would kick him when he was down. There was no need to say how miserable his end would be. Young Master Han, how should I understand this mnemonic phrase? He lowered his stance and asked Ling Han for guidance. Ling Han smiled faintly. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. In his last life, he had met a person who had also cultivated the large Sun Heaven Heart Scroll, and had gone astray on that incantation. Moreover, his condition was much more serious, as his spine had been completely shattered. He was entrusted by someone to concoct a heaven-grade alchemical pill that could regenerate bones for this person. Out of careful consideration, he also understood the Great Sun Heaven Heart scripture to be absolutely sure. Thus, he was able to see where Guang Yuan's problem lay with a single glance. Then let's discuss it, Ling Han said. After a few minutes, Guang Yuan looked convinced, and his expression became more and more solemn. In his heart, Ling Han's position had risen infinitely. Knowing the Great Sun Heaven Heart scripture was already very impressive. One had to know that he had only obtained an incomplete scroll from an ancient tomb. However, knowing the cultivation technique was one thing. As long as one had an outstanding memory, one would naturally be able to memorize it. However, Ling Han had already surpassed the level of rote memorization, and was even more profound than his knowledge, making him feel as if he was suddenly enlightened from time to time. Some things that he usually couldn't figure out suddenly became clear. No wonder Ling Han said that he had a chance to advance into the spiritual pedestal tier. The latter's understanding was like that of a master of martial art, making him feel an endless sense of insignificance. Ling Han glanced at him, and revealed a faint smile. Wanting to subdue this person was a spur of the moment. Considering Feng Yan's threat, after all, Wu Songlin and Fu Yuanxing couldn't possibly follow him around all day. However, in at most a year's time, he would definitely be able to reach the spiritual ocean tier, and then Guang Yuan naturally wouldn't be able to help him. Thus, he set a time limit of a year. As for whether Guang Yuan would still be willing to leave by then, that would depend on whether he was in the mood to keep him. Guang Yuan still had to make arrangements, so he agreed to go to Huyang University to look for Ling Han 3 days later. An elite of the spiritual ocean tier was subdued by you just like that? Lu Yutong still didn't dare to believe it. He's merely in the spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han sighed. In his last life, he wouldn't even want a spiritual ocean tier, but who asked him to be too weak now? Spiritual ocean tier was spiritual ocean tier, he'd just have to make do with it. Lu Yutong could only roll her eyes. If a spiritual ocean tier elite joined the Lu family, it was guaranteed that the Grand Elder of the Lu family would personally come out to welcome him and make a considerable promise. Would he die if he didn't show off? Niu will also be Ling Han's bodyguard, Hu Niu said, unwilling to be outdone. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, all right, I'll rely on Niu to protect me in the future. Hu Niu instantly grinned, appearing to be extremely happy. After the three of them returned to the academy, Lu Yutong returned to her own residence. Ling Han held Hu Niu's small hand and returned to his own courtyard. From afar, he saw a girl standing guard at the door, looking around with an anxious expression. It was Yun Shuang. What, Lady Yan wants to treat me to a meal again? Ling Han said with a smile. Young Master Han, please save me. Yun Shuang suddenly knelt down. Chapter 201. What's the matter? Ling Han asked. Yun Shuang only sobbed. Thankfully, this place was deserted enough, or else anyone would think that Ling Han was bullying her. If you don't tell me, how can I help you? All right, I'll tell you after you've cried enough. Ling Han opened the door and was about to close it when Yun Shuang squeezed in, grabbing onto the corner of his shirt with a slender hand. I say, why do all of you like Niu who tugs at the corner of other people's clothes? Niu can forget it, but men and women are like this too, it's very bothersome for me, Ling Han said, shaking his head. Hu Niu nodded heavily, expressing her attitude, Ling Han is Niu's. Madam she. Yun Shuang Shuang was obviously not in the mood to joke, and just as she opened her mouth, she started crying again. Ling Han sighed, and said, "In 3 breaths' time, if you're still crying, I'll throw you out." Bad guy. Lu Ru'er walked out from the inner room and glared fiercely at Ling Han. Seems like throwing one out isn't enough. Ling Han rolled up his sleeves. Ha, damn pervert, let me tell you, my cultivation has already recovered by 70%, and I don't need to be threatened by you anymore. Lu Ru'er said proudly. Then why aren't you guys getting out of here? You eat and use my stuff every day, don't you know it costs a lot? Ling Han said irritably. Lu Ru'er instantly exploded in anger. She felt that this guy didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. The 2 sisters were obviously rare beauties, but this guy didn't even have the slightest bit of interest in them. What a freak. He shouldn't have the hobbies of the opposite sex, right? It was possible, or else how could he ignore the charm of the 2 sisters? Thinking of this, she could not help but tremble all over. However, being interrupted by the 2 of them, Yun Shuang Shuang finally calmed down, and said, "Please take me in, young Master Han. Shuang Shuang has nowhere else to go." Ling Han was startled, and said, "Aren't you a member of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? You actually came here to ask me to take you in? What kind of logic is that? Do all of you think my place is a garbage dump? 1, 2, 3, who knows if there'll still be any in the future?" Lu Ru'er was instantly enraged, and said, "Who are you calling trash? Young Master Han, madam is too cruel." Yun Shuang Shuang began to cry again. All right, Ling Han said. "Calm down and speak slowly from the beginning to the end. Don't cry after every sentence. Otherwise, I really can't take it anymore. Come, sit down first." Lu Ru'er rolled her eyes at Ling Han, and went over to help Yun Shuang Shuang into the house. After having her sit down, she even poured a cup of hot tea for Yun Shuang Shuang to calm down. Ling Han and Hun Yo was also Ling Han. The 2 of them shrugged at the same time. They were the masters, so how did they become outsiders instead? Yun Shuang Shuang held the hot tea in her hands. After resting for a while, she finally opened her mouth and told him everything that had happened. Yan Tianzhao waking up was originally a good thing, but to Yun Shuang Shuang, it was the beginning of a nightmare. This was because she had overheard the conversation between Lady Yan and Yan Tianzhao. It turned out that she had been adopted not because Lady Yan wanted to find spiritual sustenance, but because she had other motives from the very beginning. Cauldron. Lady Yan probably knew that her son would not be able to wake up in a short period of time, but there was only so much golden cultivation time for a martial artist. How could she let her son lose at the starting line? Coincidentally, she had grasped a mystical technique that was divided into 2 parts, the main technique and the secondary technique. The secondary technique could be cultivated by one person, and the main technique could be cultivated by the other person. When the time came, as long as the 2 people cultivated together, the person who cultivated the main technique would be able to easily devour the cultivation of the person who cultivated the secondary technique, and even his life force. And what she had cultivated since young was precisely the secondary technique, all for the sake of helping Yan Tianzhao. The reason why she had not acted immediately was because Yan Tianzhao had just woken up, and was just beginning to cultivate the main technique. Once he had some small success, he would take action. At that time, not only would Yun Shuang Shuang lose all her cultivation, she would also lose her life force, and become an old woman in an extremely short period of time. If Lady Yan treated me sincerely, I would be willing to die for Lady Yan, but this kind of result, I cannot accept. Yun Shuang Shuang's eyes were red from crying. Too bad, too bad. Lu Ru'er was also wiping away her tears at the side. Her tear ducts were extremely developed, causing Ling Han to criticize silently, "You are an assassin, can you not be so emotional?" Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, Lady Yan has been in business for many years, and definitely has a large network of connections and information in the imperial city. You will not be able to hide from me for long. At that time, if Lady Yan comes looking for you, will you be able to resist? Taking away one's adopted daughter was a matter of course, and even the laws of the empire would support Lady Yan. If Ling Han tried to stop her, then it would be equivalent to kidnapping. Ling Han had a backer, and so did Lady Yan, and her backer was very strong. Yun Shuang's expression changed, and her delicate body trembled. If she was really taken back by Lady Yan, then she would rather die. I've got it. Those two people's injuries are more or less healed. Why don't you leave Rain Country with them? Ling Han said to Yun Shuang. Very good, he could get rid of 3 problems at once. Who said we're leaving Rain Country? Lu Ru'er immediately jumped up. I'm definitely going to kill that traitor. It's more like you're going to die. Ling Han poured cold water on them. You too, you should just obediently continue your cultivation. After Su Ku Exine fell for your trick once, she will definitely not fall for it again. You two will not have a good chance to scheme again. Lu Ru'er pouted, wanting to refute, but she knew that Ling Han was right. The difference in power between the two sides was too great, and they had also lost the advantage of taking the initiative, so it was practically impossible for them to assassinate Su Ku Exine. Young Master Ling is right. Lu Feng'er also walked out, and said, when our injuries are completely healed, we will immediately leave Rain Country. We sisters are very grateful for young Master Ling's care during this period of time, and we hope that we will have the chance to repay young Master Ling in the future. If you two leave early, that would be the best repayment to me, Ling Han said without any trace of politeness. Hu Niu nodded seriously. This despicable guy, Lu Ru'er humphed, and said, damn scoundrel, if you come to Fire Country in the future and run into trouble, remember to look for us sisters. We will definitely treat you well. She emphasized the word, well, obviously feeling very resentful. All right, you can stay with the two sisters tonight, and leave in a few days, Ling Han said to Yun Shuang, acting as if he had not heard anything. Thank you, young Master Han, thank you, ladies. Yun Shuang bowed. Peng, 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 it was at this moment that there was a knock on the main door, causing the 4 of them to be startled at the same time. Young Master Ling, are you in? A delicate and soft voice came from outside, yet it caused Yun Shuang to involuntarily shiver, her face pale with fright. Lady Yan. The Lu sisters mouthed at the same time. Ling Han nodded. Kill her. Lu Ru'er's killing intent immediately soared. Chapter 202. Kill your sister. Ling Han sneered. You're insulting me. Lu Ru'er felt very wronged, and instantly pouted. The one outside is in the spiritual ocean tier, Ling Han said. Lu Ru'er instantly fell silent. She and her sister were defeated by Su Ku Exine, who was in the spiritual ocean tier. If they could kill such a powerful warrior, then they wouldn't have to hide here to heal. What should we do? Yun Shuang looked at Ling Han. Under Lady Yan's influence, she had no idea at all. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, all of you, go hide in the inner room. The 3 girls quickly went to the inner room, while Ling Han walked to the main door and opened it. At the door, Lady Yan was standing in a graceful posture, exuding a mature beauty, definitely not something a little girl who was still wet behind the ears could compare to. She smiled faintly, and said, what is young Master Ling busy with, making me wait for so long? Suspicious? Ling Han naturally wouldn't say anything. This woman loved her son deeply, this was undeniable, but he didn't expect her to be so terrifyingly scheming, already plotting against Yun Shuang many years ago. If Yun Shuang hadn't overheard her conversation with Yan Tianzhao, Yun Shuang would probably be extremely grateful to her even in death. Thinking about it, to be able to make cherishing flower pavilions business so big, how could Lady Yen be a simple person? Nothing, just playing with Hun Yo, Ling Han said with a smile. Is something the matter, lady? Can't you come and sit if you have nothing to do? Lady Yen smiled sweetly, extremely flirtatious. Ling Han, however, had goosebumps. You're already in your 40s, no matter how flirtatious you are, you can't take advantage of a young girl like me, right? He frowned, and said, a man and a woman alone, I'm afraid it's not very convenient. Young Master Ling really knows how to joke. You and Tian Zhao are brothers, my junior, how can there be a man and a woman alone? Lady Yen said lightly, then giggled, her body trembling slightly. Young Master Ling, could it be that you're hiding a girl and are afraid I'll find out? She forced her way in, and Ling Han couldn't stop her at all. The power of the spiritual ocean tear was much stronger than his. Hun Yo instantly glared at her angrily, naturally treating Lady Yen as an enemy. Ling Han picked Hun Yo up to prevent the little girl from attacking and being injured by Lady Yen. He followed behind Lady Yen and said, I have indeed hidden a delicate girl. Oh, who? Mrs. Yen asked casually. Isn't it just this little girl? Ling Han laughed. He knew that Lady Yen was already suspicious, which was why she had forced her way in. It was obvious that Yun Shuang was extremely important in Lady Yen's heart, to the extent that she did not hesitate to fall out with him. This involved Yen Tian Zhao's future. A mother's madness should never be underestimated. She could do unimaginable things. Lady Yen stared blankly for a moment, then immediately began to laugh in an indulgent manner. She didn't mind at all flinging her waves in front of Ling Han's face, causing Ling Han to feel a chill run down his spine. This body of flesh was just too old. He didn't want it at all. Young Master Ling, has Shuang ever come here? She suddenly stopped and turned around to ask. Of course. Ling Han nodded. A few days ago, Lady Yen invited me to a banquet. Didn't she send Lady Shuang to come? Shuang didn't come today. Lady Yen asked meaningfully. Ling Han knew that this was the time to lay all his cards on the table. If he answered no, and Lady Yen found Yun Shuang here, then the relationship between the two parties would naturally be broken. No. Ling Han didn't even think, and directly refused. Although he had always had the mentality of sympathizing with the weak, to scheme like this to the adopted daughter, Ling Han felt that it was shameful for such a person. Young Master Ling doesn't mind, right? Lady Yen asked. If I said I mind, would Lady Yen listen to me? Ling Han countered, but sighed inwardly. If only Guang Yuan had come today. Lady Yen only giggled, and began to walk around the courtyard. Very soon, she arrived at the house that the Lu sisters lived in. She pushed lightly, and when she found that the door was locked, a cold smile appeared on her lips. She suddenly exerted force in her palm, and with a crack, the lock was instantly shattered. With a creak, the door opened a crack. Lady Yen gave a light push and the two doors swung open. Ah! A girl was putting on her clothes. Seeing this, she hurriedly used her clothes to cover her chest, and said in panic, Who is it? Lady Yan's gaze swept over. This was a young girl, extremely beautiful, but she couldn't compare to Yun Shuang. Furthermore, she was too familiar with Yun Shuang. Even if the other was in disguise, it would not be able to hide from her eyes. This girl obviously wasn't. Ah, please keep this a secret for me, lady. Ling Han sighed deliberately. Please don't tell Yutong. A hint of suspicion flashed across Lady Yan's face. Could it be that this girl was Ling Han's little lover, and that was why he kept stopping her from entering? It was that simple, but why did this girl look so familiar? As she thought this, she nodded slowly, and said with a smile, Men are indeed greedy and lustful. Yutong is a noble daughter of the Lu family. Treat her well, and don't miss out on this good marriage. Ling Han only smiled awkwardly. I won't disturb you two anymore. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. If Master Ling is free, come visit the Cherishing Flower Pavilion more often. Tian misses you and Yutong very much. Lady Yen turned to leave. I'll see you out, lady. Ling Han turned back and winked at Lu Feng, then saw Lady Yen out. When she reached the door, Lady Yen suddenly turned around, and said, Master Ling, what's the name of that girl just now? I seem to have seen her somewhere before. How could that be? She's just a silly girl who hasn't seen the world, Ling Han said with a smile. Lady Yen nodded, and turned to leave. Ling Han closed the door, and quickly walked into the inner room. At this time, Lu Ru'er and Yun Shuang had also crawled out from under the bed. They had been hanging from the bed all this while, holding their breath, and were now gasping for air. Phew, luckily the old witch was tricked away. Lu Ru'er said, patting her chest. Ling Han shook his head, and said, not necessarily. Didn't she leave? Lu Ru'er asked in confusion. She did leave, but she did not completely dispel her suspicions, Ling Han said. If it weren't for the fact that she doesn't want to completely fall out with me, she would definitely have searched the entire courtyard just now, but that would only delay her for a while. He paused, then said to Lu Ru'er, on the other hand, your identity has been exposed. I believe that she will soon realize that you are that wanted criminal. Impossible. Lu Ru'er shook her head, then said proudly, just now, I had purposely made elder sister appear. No one has seen her appearance before. Are you a pig? Ling Han said bluntly, and pointed at the bronze mirror, you. The two of you look so much alike, and there are definitely some discrepancies between the two of you in the portrait. Thus, the two of you can completely be treated as the same person. She should have gone to inform the Imperial Guards now. Not long after, the Imperial Guards will come to search. At that time, the three of you will be found, and her goal will naturally be achieved. Chapter 203. Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tingyun, and the others who had not firmly supported Ling Han were naturally very regretful. At the banquet, they continuously toasted Ling Han, saying all sorts of nice things, wanting to mend this crack. But even if a broken mirror was mended, how could that crack disappear just like that? What was missed in the end. Zhu Wujiu, Jin Taiji, and Li Hao were very happy. The person they were following was actually a black-grade high-level alchemist, which made them feel as if they were living in a dream. This kind of important person was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the clan heads of the 8 great clans, and now he was actually addressing them as brothers. They could not believe it no matter what. Guang Yuan, on the other hand, was very gloomy. This brat had hidden himself too deeply, causing his little heart to beat wildly, and he had not been able to sleep well for a few days. However, Ling Han had given him a cultivation technique, which instantly swept away all his gloominess. The complete large sun heaven heart scroll, and there was even a 5th layer of the cultivation technique. He only had 4 layers in his possession, and they were even a little incomplete. Thus, this was obviously an earth-grade medium-level cultivation technique, but in his hands, it could only display the might of a black-grade high level. Even so, it allowed him to become an ultimate warrior of spiritual ocean tier that ranked in the top 10 among the lone cultivators, and the might of the large sun heaven heart scroll could be seen clearly. Now that he had obtained the complete large sun heaven heart scroll, he even had the hope of breaking through to spiritual pedestal tier. Instantly, he was so excited that his scalp went numb, and he almost cried. Little brat, you can't play like this. Guang Yuan said faintly. Because this cultivation technique was only given to him after the banquet had ended and everyone had left, he was not afraid that his image as an ultimate warrior of spiritual ocean tier would be lost. Ling Han deliberately stretched out his hand, and said, Brother Guang, if you are not satisfied, you can return the cultivation technique to me. Go, now that it's in my pocket, then it's mine. Guang Yuan hurriedly broke into a run, and said, I'm going to cultivate. If you want to fight, feel free to say so. I've decided, since I've already boarded your pirate ship, then I'll go all the way to the end. Ling Han could not help but laugh in spite of himself. This Guang Yuan was quite interesting, but he was also a hot-blooded person, which was why he would feel at ease to pass on the large Sun Heaven Heart Scroll. As long as one could obtain his trust, then no one would suffer a loss, and they would only earn a lot. He was the Alchemy Emperor. Firstly, there was no need to worry about alchemical pills, and he had once been an ultimate warrior of heaven tier, so how many cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had he memorized? Any one of them would be enough to make spiritual infant tier elites fight to the death for them. One night passed, and early the next morning, the eldest imperial prince and the third imperial prince came to visit one after another, wanting to mend their relationship with him. But how could Ling Han pay them any attention? What he hated the most were those so-called friends who were obviously dragging you down, yet insisted on saying that it was for your own good. He would never give face to such people, and would directly take them away. The eldest imperial prince and the third imperial prince both left in anger, but Ling Han had already revealed his identity as a big boss of alchemy, so even if they were displeased, so what? Would they dare to be rude to such an existence? Putting aside the fact that they were only imperial princes now, even if they had ascended to the throne and become emperors, they would still have to be polite to Ling Han. The seventh imperial prince did not come over. He was now sitting on the fishing platform, so he was naturally not in a hurry. Time passed day by day. Every day, Ling Han would rub the 100 poison jade ointment on his body, and quickly increase his cultivation level. The benefit of this ointment was not only that it could increase one's cultivation level very quickly, but it also had very few side effects. It was not like taking the 4 transformations pill, which would leave behind alchemical poison in one's body. After taking it for a while, one would have to stop and wait for the alchemical poison in one's body to be expelled before continuing to take it. Another 2 days later, a considerable commotion was heard from within the Black Tower. Hu Niu had broken through. Gushing spring tear. Niu can help Ling Han now. After coming out from the Black Tower, she threw herself into Ling Han's arms, and said proudly, Niu is so powerful. Ling Han laughed loudly, and patted her head. Then, he thought for a moment, and said, Come, let's spar and see just how strong you are. The two of them re-entered the Black Tower. This was a world of its own, and no matter how intense their battle was, they would not have to worry about being discovered by those outside. Furthermore, this place was sufficiently large and sturdy. Putting aside the fact that they were only in the gushing spring tier, even if they had reached the shattering void tier, they would not have to worry about destroying the Black Tower. Once Hu Niu moved, she would immediately reveal her ferocious nature, and every move she made was incredibly fierce. Not only that, she seemed to have the ability to teleport over short distances. The distance was really not much, only about an inch or so, but in battle, the slightest difference could mean the difference of 1,000 miles. This kind of ability was very effective, and also very terrifying. If it was not for the fact that they were inside the Black Tower, even if Ling Han was a god, he would not have been able to capture Hu Niu's teleportation. That was because the little girl's speed was too fast, creating an afterimage that could not be detected at all. Battling with Ling Han inside the Black Tower, even an elite of the Shattering Void tier would have to kneel. Thus, this was naturally unfair. Ling Han only defended, and allowed Hu Niu to attack as she pleased to assess the little girl's battle prowess. The result shocked him. A conservative estimate of the little girl's battle prowess was at least 9 stars. When he was in the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier, he only had battle prowess of 9 or 10 stars, and Hu Niu was actually able to match him. There were 2 main reasons why the little girl's battle prowess was so terrifying: speed and teleportation. Of course, her claws were extremely sharp, enough to tear through the defenses of the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Otherwise, being able to hit someone but not wound them would be pointless. The source of all this should be the human-shaped spirit base in Hu Niu's dantian. That was too strange. Thinking about it now, Ling Han felt a chill run down his spine. As Hunyo advanced into the gushing spring tier, Ling Han could only faintly sense the little girl's presence, which was becoming more and more difficult to grasp. One had to know that he possessed the divine sense of a heaven-tier warrior, and his senses were definitely not inferior to those of a true heaven-tier warrior, but even he was almost unable to see through Hunyo. What kind of concept was this? He believed that as long as Hunyo advanced into the spiritual ocean tier, then he would definitely not be able to surpass the little girl's cultivation. There are too many monsters in this life. Ling Han concluded. It had not even been a year since he had been reborn, but first, he had come across the corpse of an ultimate warrior of the shattering void tier, and then a living, incomplete immortal had directly appeared. The Thousand Corpse sect, which had disappeared for innumerable years, had come out again, and there was also Yen Tian Zhao. That evil aura made him feel a little annoyed, and even uneasy. In comparison, Feng Yen was a small matter, and he was also a relatively normal breed. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. No matter how strong he is not as powerful as the Black Tower. If he provokes me, I'll just suppress him completely. Ling Han did not think about it anymore, and continued to cultivate diligently. On the day of the martial arts tournament, he would publicly beat up Feng Yen. The days passed one after another, and the Rain Emperor's 60th birthday drew closer and closer. Not only did the kings of the various lands come in person or send representatives to congratulate him, even the other 8 great nations sent representatives with important status to deliver congratulatory gifts. The imperial city was bustling with activity, comparable to when it was the new year. Every household was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. And it was at this moment that the Qin clan finally could not hold on any longer, and surrendered. The Earth and Water faction smashed the shops of the Qin clan every day, and added with the fact that Ling Han did not hesitate to lose money, the source of income of the Qin clan was suddenly cut off. In the past month or so, they were almost at the end of their rope. At first, the Qin clan had wanted to use Sun Ziyan's identity to hang on, but as the news that Ling Han had become a black-grade high-level alchemist spread, an important figure of the Sun clan directly stepped out and told Sun Ziyan to divorce that woman from the Qin clan. In this way, the Qin clan had lost their last hope. Qin Yunxiang overflowed and died, ending his ugly life. Ling Han did not continue the attack, and decided to put an end to this matter. Chapter 204. The second plan was to destroy and rebuild. First shatter the existing 9 large origin nuclei, and then form a new super-large origin nucleus, which was the escaping one. This conformed to the natural law, and wasn't a hot-headed delusion, but it could be foreseen that this was far easier to do than to say. The 9 large origin nuclei were the source of his power, and when they all shattered, the power that erupted was enough to kill him 1,000 or 10,000 times, so what escaping one was there to talk about? Ling Han dared to do this because there was still a Black Tower Lord in his Dantian. This lord shattered him in his previous life, just to let him cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and then let him seize another body to be reborn. How much power and care was this? Now that he self-destructed his origin nuclei, Lord Black, would you care or not? Of course you would care, then that's fine. Ling Han was a bit shameless, but it couldn't be helped. The 10th layer of the poly was the first in history, and he didn't even know what was the right thing to do. He could only rely on the Black Tower, or else this attempt might only have a 1 in 10,000 chance of success, so how would he dare to take the risk? Come on. He controlled the origin nuclei in his Dantian, and began the Great Destruction. To do this, it was actually very easy, because each large origin nucleus was composed of 5 small origin nuclei, forming a balance in a subtle way. As long as this balance was broken, the 5 elements would go out of control, and naturally self-destruct. Not one by one, but all together, destruction was always easier than construction, and in that instant, all the origin nuclei were trembling. The 5 elements both reinforced and restrained each other, tottering as if the foundation of a skyscraper had suffered great damage and destruction was imminent. Hung, 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 the five-element origin nuclei collapsed one by one, but it wasn't an outward explosion, but an inward collapse, just like the formation of a black hole, shrinking from an infinitely large volume to an infinitely small particle. Ling Han's mind shook, and he already felt the appearance of an external force. Black Tower. His divine sense swept over his dantian, and saw that the originally calm and unremarkable Black Tower was now emitting a faint radiance. There were golden characters shining on the tower, but Ling Han didn't recognize a single one of them, just like the indestructible Heaven Scroll that day, which required 10,000 years to comprehend. No, no, no. 10,000 years only to comprehend one layer of the cultivation technique. Bursts of mighty power were emitted from the Black Tower, acting on his total of 45 origin nuclei. It was precisely this burst of power that caused his origin nuclei to collapse, and not explode. Otherwise, his dantian would have exploded. A smile appeared at the corner of Ling Han's mouth. As expected, he was right. The Black Tower had made a move. In the many previous attempts, the Black Tower had never reacted. That was because none of the various attempts would threaten Ling Han's life or cultivation, so Lord Black was naturally too lazy to make a move. However, if Ling Han's origin nucleus was really detonated, then wouldn't Lord Black's 10,000 years of preparation be in vain? He hurriedly suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind and began to fuse the corresponding nucleus points. Earth returned to earth, and fire returned to fire. Finally, the 45 nucleus points were formed into a large 5 elements nucleus. This still seemed very small, because each nucleus was formed from 9 points, far less than 1/10,000th of its peak, but the power contained within was extremely terrifying. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind, and he suddenly had a strange idea. Could it be possible to fuse the 5 elements nucleus together to form one origin nucleus, the only one? Only then would it conform to the idea of the escaped one. Again, he began to fuse the 5 newly born origin nuclei. However, the difficulty of this was ridiculously high, because each origin nucleus was formed from 9 small origin nuclei, and was filled with terrifying power in the first place. Moreover, the 5 elements were independent. First of all, water and fire did not mix, so how could they be fused? Ling Han stopped, and began to rack his brain. Every element in the world was independent, and wanting to fuse them would naturally be met with rejection. However, at the same time, the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, so it was not impossible to fuse them together. As the saying went, Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, and 3 begets all things. Everything could be returned to 1, the source of great Tao. However, the world did not allow mortals to grasp the source of great Tao, so there was the idea of the escaped one. He dared to shatter the 9 origin nuclei and fuse them together, which conformed to the idea of the escaped one. However, the 5 origin nuclei were not the true one, not the true path. This was based on the Heaven Tier's understanding of martial art in his previous life. Otherwise, who would dare to do such a thing? The 5 elements reinforced each other, and evolved into all things, so to return to one, he had to reverse it, and make use of the 5 elements' mutual restraint. Ling Han's eyes shone brightly. He knew what he had to do. He had to let the 5 origin nuclei mutually restrain and devour each other, and in the end, there would only be one left, the one that fused the 5 elements. This sounded simple, but in reality, he had to ensure that the 5 origin nuclei mutually devour each other and maintain an absolute balance. Otherwise, as long as there was the slightest mistake, all his previous efforts would be wasted, and he would not be able to return to the one and only, the escaped one. In short, he could only succeed, and not fail. There was a challenge, but he liked it. The 5 elements mutually restrained each other. Metal countered wood, wood countered earth, earth countered water, water countered fire, and fire countered metal. The 5 elements chaos lotus swayed, absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, which gathered into his dantian through his meridians, sending over new power. Ling Han drove the 5 origin nuclei, and carried out the last step. The metal origin nuclei began to devour the wood origin nuclei, and the wood origin nuclei began to devour the earth origin nuclei. Finally, the fire element devoured the metal origin nuclei, forming a chain. Ling Han's divine sense could clearly feel that the 5 origin nuclei were all shrinking, slowly fusing together, and in the end, became a brand new origin nucleus. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, all 5 elements were present, yet there was no distinction between them. Success! Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, and felt his whole body aching. He did not even have the strength to stand up, as if his body was extremely weak. But on the other hand, his spirit was at the peak it had ever been. This kind of comparison was very strange. He opened the door and called out softly. Only when the words left his mouth did he realize that his voice was very low and hoarse, and even he could not recognize himself. Ling Han. Xiao, Hun You's ears were too sharp. With a xiao, she ran in from outside, and with a peng, crashed into his arms. The force of this collision was too great, as if he was a cannonball, and Ling Han was instantly knocked to the ground. Hun You, however, did not care. She rubbed her small face against him, and said, Ling Han, naughty, naughty, not playing with Nyo, that's right. If you went into seclusion for a few more days, Hun You would have starved to death. Another person walked over, and it was Lu Yutong. She shook her head, and said, you went into seclusion for a whole month, making me so worried. 1 month? Ling Han was shocked. In his memory, it was only 10 days. Could it be that in order to fuse with the 5 origin nuclei, he actually spent 20 days? No wonder he was so weak now. He had not eaten or drunk for so many days. Bring me some fruits. I need to replenish my energy first, or else I'll really die, he said. Brat, you're strange. Guang Yuan heard the commotion and also walked over, looking at Ling Han like he was a monster. Chapter 205. Guang Yuan said, if a normal poly-tier cultivator went into seclusion for a month, they would definitely have died long ago. Brat, you can actually open your mouth and speak, how strange. He looked at Ling Han with a burning gaze, wanting nothing more than to dissect his body. To be honest, for the first 10 days, Ling Han still had something to eat, but for the last 20 days, he really didn't have anything to eat. Even he himself didn't notice the passage of time. He only fused with the 5-element origin nuclei, and when he successfully came out, he discovered that 20 days had already passed. At that time, he should have been in a strange state, using the spiritual chi of heaven and earth as food to maintain his vitality. After a martial artist advanced into the flower blossom tier, he only needed to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to survive, because after breaking through to the flower blossom tier, there would be a change in the hierarchy of life, and there would no longer be an absolute dependence on normal food. Previously, he fused with the 5-element origin nuclei to capture the one that had escaped, resonating with the Tao of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to temporarily increasing the hierarchy of life, and thus entering into this kind of state in advance. But now that he had escaped, he immediately felt hungry and weak. Lu Yutong brought over some fruits, and Ling Han immediately ate them. He had to fill his stomach first, and then eat meat later, or his body wouldn't be able to bear it. Guang Yuan looked at Ling Han. He kept feeling that something was off, so he suddenly clapped his hands and said, that's right, how did your cultivation level drop to the 1st layer of poly? Previously, this brat was obviously in the 9th layer of poly. People went into seclusion to break through to a higher cultivation level, but even if they failed, they couldn't possibly fall back, what more from the 9th layer to the 1st layer. This was practically extremely rare. In the whole world of martial art, could there be a second person like this? Meanwhile, Lu Yutong's heart tightened, and she looked closely at Ling Han. As expected, she sensed that the aura emanating from Ling Han's dantian was indeed only one origin nucleus. She instantly paled, but thinking that Ling Han must be even more upset, she hurriedly comforted, it's fine. With your cultivation speed, it'll take at most 2 or 3 months to cultivate again. Ling Han smiled. He was naturally aware of his own situation. Although there was only one origin nucleus in his body, it was several times stronger than when he had been in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. He did not explain, as the implications would be too great. Moreover, it was likely that no one would believe him anyway. No. Guang Yuan was shocked again, his eyes fixed on Ling Han's dantian, and said, "It's only the 1st layer of pole, but why does it feel so strong, as if it can rival the 1st layer of gushing spring? The 1st layer of element gathering tier was comparable to the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. If word of this got out, he'd definitely be slapped in the face." Ling Han, however, nodded internally. Spiritual ocean tier was spiritual ocean tier, after all, his judgment was indeed much more brilliant. Ha ha ha, how is this possible? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Guang Yuan laughed and patted his head. Puff Ling Han almost spurted out. He was just praising him for having a good eye, and this guy immediately gave him a resounding slap in the face. By the way, there's a silly boy who came to see you a few days ago. He said that he had completed the 1-month promise and had to go do something before coming to listen to your orders, Guang Yuan said. Oh, that should be Zhu Wujiu. He had broken through to gushing spring tier. If he said he was going to do something, then he was definitely going to challenge Nangong Ji again. He was a person who valued friendship and loyalty. Ling Han nodded inwardly. If it weren't for Zhu Wujiu's personality, he would at most teach him the cultivation methods of the Silver Moon clan and not keep him by his side. Would anyone have a chance to be by his side and be ordered around by him? After eating some fruits, Ling Han also recovered some of his strength. After a while, he once again began to eat. Hunyo naturally did not mind eating with him, and ended up eating 10 times more than him, and this was only a casual gesture from the little girl. Ling Han used cultivation as an excuse and went to the small forest outside by himself. He wanted to fully evaluate his current strength. He gathered origin power on his right fist, and when it reached its limit, he suddenly punched out. The power of his fist surged out and actually turned into a solid fist the size of a human head, which shot forward. Peng, 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 a dozen or so large trees in front of him were all knocked down, causing dust to fly into the air. Ling Han retracted his fist, a satisfied expression on his face. The power of this punch was definitely on par with the early stage of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier, as if the 10th layer of Pali was the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. Breaking through from Pali to gushing spring tier is a qualitative leap. My power can increase by at least 10 times. Then when I truly break through to gushing spring tier, my power should be on par with the 6th or even 7th layer, not to mention battle prowess. The higher the tier, the harder it is to challenge those of a higher tier. But after fusing with the origin nucleus, my battle prowess has actually increased. When I was in the 1st layer of Pali, I only had battle prowess of 5 to 6 stars. With the support of such a powerful force, can I cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques? Ling Han's heart thumped. If he could use black-grade martial arts techniques now, it would be a terrifying increase to his battle prowess. Let's give it a try. He rummaged through his mind, looking for a suitable martial arts technique. However, he had all 5 elements, so aside from thunder-type martial arts techniques, he could actually use any other martial arts technique, so he had a wide range of choices. Then, it's this, the 3 styles of black origin. It's a sword technique that the Sword Emperor once used. It's said that he derived this sword technique to form the sword light. Back then, when he begged me to refine pills, I asked for it. At that time, it was just a spur of the moment, but I never thought it would be so useful. He sat down cross-legged and first derived this sword technique in his mind. This was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, but there was also a difference in quality among black-grade high-level martial arts techniques. Some could even be infinitely close to earth grade. If they were graded from 1 to 10, then most black grade high-level martial arts techniques would be below 5 points, and occasionally there would be 6 or 7 points. However, Black Origin Sword technique was this was only one step away from Earth grade martial arts techniques, and could be said to be the strongest technique before the spiritual pedestal tier. However, his words were bitter and extremely difficult to understand. Thankfully, although Ling Han was only in Pali tier, his understanding of martial art was solid Heaven tier. Perhaps it would be a bit difficult to comprehend Heaven-grade martial arts techniques, but Earth-grade martial arts techniques were naturally a piece of cake, not to mention this was only close to Earth-grade. First style, Mysterious 3000. Ling Han brandished his sword, but the sword technique appeared very dry, with no obvious power. In fact, it was a bit crooked, and if someone saw it, they'd probably laugh their heads off. The Sword Emperor is indeed a freak. He actually managed to learn such a sword technique at the Gushing Spring tier, he cursed in his heart. Even with his comprehension ability of the Heaven tier, he still felt that cultivating this sword technique was a bit strenuous, which showed just how freakish the Sword Emperor was at the time. However, he didn't consider that it was impossible for Sword Emperor to learn this sword technique in a day. Ling Han continuously brandished his sword, and the sword technique became smoother and smoother. After all, this was a powerful warrior of Heaven tier deriving, so it would be strange if there wasn't such an effect. Shio, 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 he brandished his sword, and origin power shot out, combining with the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, turning into dozens of sharp swords that shot forward. Peng, the earth wailed and trembled, and the trees in front of him fell in patches. Ling Han was shocked. Such a terrifying sword technique. Chapter 206. Impressive, truly impressive. Ling Han nodded repeatedly. According to the description of the sword technique, one has to unleash a rain of 3,000 swords in one strike to be considered to have reached the stage of great success. The dozens of swords I unleashed in one strike only reached 1%, but the power of each sword rain is equivalent to a full-strength strike from me. Even if I were to face it, I would have to use the blood-sucking origin gold to form a shield to block it. Otherwise, there would be no way to neutralize it. With this sword technique alone, as long as I break through to Gushing Spring tier, I will definitely be able to defeat Feng Yan in a single move. However, that guy should still have a trump card. It won't be easy to kill him instantly. Moreover, this sword technique consumes too much origin energy. A single sword strike is equivalent to dozens of full-force attacks. If it wasn't for the fact that my Dantian space has expanded by around 100 times, it wouldn't be able to withstand so many attacks. The sword arch is indeed abnormal. This guy must have taken a spatial pill when he was young. Otherwise, even if he was in Gushing Spring tier, he wouldn't be able to withstand such consumption. In that case, aside from the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden controlled endless karmic fire in my last life. She probably fused with a ball of strange fire, or even more. The Setting Sun Saber Emperor had obtained a treasured saber forged from the blood-sucking origin gold, which was also incomparably shocking. There's also Ma Wei Yang, Zi Shuexian, and Na Lan Tuesday. These three people aren't simple either. It seems like they all have some sort of secret treasure. My battle prowess is the weakest. Now that I think about it, their backgrounds should be very powerful, and that's why they could step into the Heaven tier at such a young age. It's just that I relied on the power of alchemical pills, and that's why even though I started later, I reached first, and far surpassed them. This stream of water in the vast lands seems to be much deeper than I thought. Forget it. It's been 10,000 years. It's time for those fellows to return to dust. I can't be bothered to think about it. Ling Han recovered his origin power and began to practice the second form of the Mystic Origin Sword technique, 10,000 techniques return to one. This was a powerful move that required a certain amount of time to charge up. It was as if 10,000 attacks were fused together into a single strike. In his previous life, Ling Han had only skimmed through the Mystic Origin Sword technique. Because he had no intention of cultivating it, he naturally did not take it to heart. But now that he was studying it, he could not help but turn pale. Is this really a profound level martial technique? One move was capable of unleashing 3,000 full power attacks, while the other was capable of fusing 10,000 attacks into a single strike. Its power was so strong that it was absolutely insane. Not to mention Earth rank, even a Heaven rank martial technique would not be this awesome. How is that possible? If it was Earth grade or Heaven grade, then how could he cultivate now? Body refining tier and poly tier cultivators could only cultivate yellow grade martial arts techniques, while gushing spring tier and spiritual ocean tier cultivators could advance one step further and cultivate black grade martial arts techniques. Spiritual pedestal tier cultivators could advance one step further and cultivate earth grade martial arts techniques. Only by shedding their mortal body and changing their bones, advancing into the flower blossom tier, would they have the right to peek into heaven grade martial arts techniques. Since that was the case, it should be impossible for him to cultivate an earth level martial skill, let alone a heaven level martial skill. However, he had been in the heaven tier in his previous life, so he clearly knew the power of earth grade and heaven grade martial arts techniques. Naturally, he could conclude that the power of the three styles of black origin was definitely not black grade. Ling Han recalled. No wonder the sword arch had a sour expression, as though his parents had died back then. He originally thought that with the sword Thearka's strength back then, he wouldn't care about a profound class sword art. He didn't expect these three sword arts to be so terrifying. Then what about the third style? Ling Han didn't continue to cultivate 10,000 techniques return to one. Instead, he focused on deriving the third style, and then he got a shock. The third style was called Limit Break, and the amount of origin power it needed was like an ocean. According to his calculations, even if he reached the spiritual ocean tier, he would need to accumulate power for at least a few hours before he could use this style. This was not used to fight enemies at all. A scene immediately appeared in Ling Han's mind. An ultimate elite cultivator faced a protective formation, raised his sword, and after a long time, slashed out. A flash of sword light streaked past, and the entire formation was forcefully sliced into pieces. That's right, Limit Break was used to slash open protective formations. In front of such a powerful move, even an ancient formation could collapse, directly killing the tens of thousands of living beings within it. This sword art could no longer be measured by tier. Ling Han propped his chin up with both hands, revealing a contemplative expression. In his previous life, he had never fought with the other 6 heaven tier cultivators because he knew that his tier was raised by alchemical pills, so his battle prowess was the weakest. Naturally, he didn't bother to seek his own humiliation. However, the other 6 often fought, fighting for the position of number 1 and number 2. Even if Na Lan Tu, Zi Shuxian, and the others were always ranked outside the top 3, they were able to exchange blows with the Sword Emperor and not die, not even be heavily injured. Thinking about it now, it was really terrifying. What kind of freaks were those 6 people back then? Ling Han couldn't help but feel a bit driven mad. In his previous life, after he reached the heaven tier, he spent all his time on finding a way to break through to the shattering void tier. Otherwise, if he went to investigate the 6 people's abilities, he wouldn't be at such a loss now. From the memory fragments of the blood-sucking origin gold, I can see a terrifying flourishing age of martial art. And in the decades or centuries after my death, hundreds of heaven-tier cultivators appeared in the vast lands, which means that I didn't understand this world at all. Moreover, there's a divine object like the Black Tower, and the little girl's spirit base is also shocking. Interesting, Ling Han stood up, and once again began to cultivate 10,000 techniques return to one. This was a powerful technique that could be used against enemies. If he was given time to accumulate power, then no matter how many trump cards Feng Yan had, he had the confidence to kill him with a single strike. This consumed too much origin power, and after a short while, Ling Han sat down again and swallowed alchemical pills, absorbing spiritual qi to recover. Sword Emperor, oh Sword Emperor, though you died long ago, if your sect was still around, I'd really like to find out what kind of place the Heaven's Sword sect is, to actually have such a terrifying martial arts technique. He practiced and stopped, and a day's time passed very quickly. Ling Han's current focus was still mainly on increasing his cultivation level. Only by breaking through to the gushing spring tier would he be able to understand the secrets of the Black Tower. Thankfully, this would only take half a month's time. Yes, though he only had one large origin nucleus left, to strengthen this origin nucleus to its limit, the time needed had increased by a whole 3 times. The next day, Lu Yutong gracefully came. I'll tell you a piece of good news. Feng Yan has left the academy, and he seems to have gone to seek some kind of spirit medicine that can restore Feng Luo's arms to their original state, she said. Ling Han was shocked. Could this Feng Luo really be born in the year of the cockroach? Previously, he'd been beaten and whipped by him, and all his teeth had fallen out, but not long after, he'd become arrogant and shameless again. Now, both of his arms had been chopped off, and there was still hope for him to recover. What the fuck? His arms have been reattached now. And, they've been reattached, but they're not flexible, and there's no way to exert force, so Feng Yan went to seek some spirit medicine, Lu Yutong said. This brother was really a competent one. Peng, 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 there was a knock on the door. Hunyo ran to open the door, and soon came back with a person. It was Zhu Wujiu. I broke through to the gushing spring tier 7 days ago, and fulfilled my promise with you. But now, I can't be your follower, so I can only repay you in my next life, Zhu Wujiu said. Why? Ling Han asked. I went to challenge Nangong Ji and crippled his Dantian. It won't be long before the academy comes to capture me. Even if they don't sentence me to death, they'll still cripple my cultivation, Zhu Wujiu said calmly, and there was not the slightest hint of fear or regret on his face. Chapter 207. Yan Tianzhao pinched his nose, and mumbled, there's actually nothing for me to do anymore. He shook his head, and said, forget it, Rain Country is only a temporary stop for me. After I obtain the mystical power, I'll first go to a more lively place in the north region for a stroll. The level of martial arts in this place is too low, and there are only a few geniuses here. It's not beneficial for my growth. He clasped his hands behind his back, and walked towards the top of the mountain. This road is opened by Niu, no one is allowed to pass. Hunyo immediately spread out her arms, looking like she was going to block his way. Little girl, you're a bit strange, but you're still not a match for me now. Step aside, I don't want to hurt you, Yan Tianzhao said calmly. It was unknown whether he was feeling pity for her, or he was afraid of Hunyo's strangeness. Aside from Ling Han, no one is allowed to pass. Hunyo roared, and took the initiative to attack. Xiao, she was so fast that she was like a gust of wind. A lot of spiritual ocean tier elites would find it very difficult to keep track of her. In just a flash, the little girl had already appeared behind Yan Tianzhao. Her 2 small hands were raised high up in the air, and shwa, 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 she was clawing madly. Teng, 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 Yan Tianzhao was instantly hit so hard that he staggered a few steps back. Streaks of blood also gushed out from his back, showing Hunyo's terrifying destructive power. Another martial artist in the first layer of gushing spring tier, and one that could injure a spiritual ocean tier elite? Everyone on the ground felt as if they were dreaming. This was really too surreal. When did gushing spring tier become so awesome? Moreover, it was only the first layer of gushing spring tier. Previously, everyone had only thought that Hunyo was purely going up to act cute. They had never thought that the tournament had just begun, and the little girl would already give everyone a great shock. The speed that she had exploded with was shockingly terrifying. But speed was only speed, and now? The first layer of gushing spring tier was able to tear apart the defenses of a spiritual ocean tier elite. This destructive power was practically terrifying. Everyone charged towards Feng Yan. The wild strength berserk ape was known to have astonishing destructive power, but when it landed on Ling Han, it only caused a little blood to flow out from the corner of his mouth. Yet Hunyo completely turned Yan Tianzhao's back into a bloody mess. With such a comparison, it was obvious that Hunyo was more worthy of the title of wild strength berserk ape. One was a spiritual ocean tier warrior fighting against a gushing spring tier warrior, while the other was a gushing spring tier warrior fighting against a spiritual ocean tier warrior. However, the result was that Hunyo's destructive power was even stronger. Wasn't this obvious? Xiao, Hunyo once again launched an attack. Speed was her greatest advantage. She came and went like the wind, and when the eyes caught sight of her figure, the little girl had actually already appeared in another place, and the eyes could only catch an afterimage of her. Hunyo did not have the slightest bit of mercy. Slaughter was her instinct, and now that it was stimulated, it was as if she had transformed into a little tiger, pouncing continuously at Yan Tianzhao. On his hands and feet, Yan Tianzhao continued to bleed profusely. He had the cultivation of spiritual ocean tier, yet he could not catch sight of Hunyo's figure at all, and was completely useless. Everyone was dumbstruck. In their minds, speed could only be used to escape, but the scene before their eyes had completely overturned their notions. The reason why they had such thoughts was because their speed had not reached the limit yet. If anyone had speed like Hunyo's, then they could completely turn speed into their strongest battle prowess. Yan Tianzhao's expression became more and more gloomy, but the corners of his lips curled up into a smile, looking extremely sinister. Hong, a cloud of green fog actually gushed out from his whole body, which turned into multiple strands of silk that densely interwove with each other, turning the space of 10 meters around him into something like a spider's web. It was not a two-dimensional web, but a three-dimensional web. Hunyo instantly crashed head first into the green web. She struggled, but discovered that although these green strands were extremely thin, their toughness was shockingly strong. No matter how much strength she used, she could not break free. Hang, under my heaven and earth spider web, you still want to escape? Yan Tianzhao smirked coldly. These silk strands wriggled as if they had a life of their own and a will of their own, pushing Hunyo layer by layer towards Yan Tianzhao. Hunyo was extremely anxious. She turned her head and opened her mouth to bite. With a woo-la sound, one of the green strands was actually bitten into two. Pooh! Yan Tianzhao was so shocked that his eyeballs were about to pop out. This was the heaven and earth spider web, his absolute trump card. As long as one was trapped by the spider web, then within the same cultivation level, no one would be able to break free. Its toughness was comparable to the forging materials of the same level. Thinking of how Hunyo had scratched him so many times just now, Yan Tianzhao could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva if the little girl occasionally used her mouth to bite him instead. He stretched out a hand to wipe his throat. It was really possible that his throat would be torn apart with a single bite, and he would directly die. He could not help but feel a strong lingering fear. Killing intent blazed in his eyes, and he delivered a palm strike towards Hunyo's chest. Hang! The Rain Emperor gave a light humph, his imperial might vast and mighty. Yan Tianzhao instantly felt a sharp pain in his chest, and his heart trembled. He hurriedly retracted some of his power, and with a pang, Hunyo was sent flying. With a paw, she landed at the foot of the mountain, her small body lying there unmoving. She had only suffered a heavy injury, because that humph from the Rain Emperor had caused Yan Tianzhao to retract a large portion of his power. The Rain Emperor had said that this was a martial arts competition, a spar, and injuries were unavoidable, but killing was definitely not allowed. In front of the Rain Emperor, who dared to act violently? Ling Han was in the midst of a great battle with Feng Yan, and when he saw this scene, he could not help but fly into a violent rage. Get lost! He unleashed a mighty sword strike, which was filled with endless fury. Even Feng Yan did not dare to take the attack head-on, and had no choice but to retreat. Ling Han only needed a sweep of his divine sense to know that Hunyo's life was not in danger. He also knew that with the Rain Emperor overseeing things, it was definitely impossible for anyone to die. But when he saw Hunyo's small body lying unmoving on the ground, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, it made him extremely furious, and he felt an urge to destroy the entire world. Hunyo had been injured because she had tried to stop Yan Tianzhao, and the little girl had naturally done this for his sake. Since his rebirth, this was the second time he had been so furious. The first time was when Ling Dongxing had been captured by the Chen clan and was about to be beheaded on the streets. Yan Tianzhao. He roared loudly, shook off Feng Yan, and chased after Yan Tianzhao. Yan Tianzhao was also very displeased. He, a mighty warrior in the spiritual ocean tier, had been injured all over by a little girl. Now, he had only knocked Hunyo unconscious and caused her to be slightly injured, so what was there to be angry about? Feng Yan was even more enraged, because Ling Han had actually shaken him off and ignored him. Moreover, this was the first time he had seen Ling Han so furious. Even when Lu Yutong had been forced to marry someone else, he had not been like this. This obviously meant that Ling Han had only been playing around with him previously, and had not treated him as an opponent at all. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Ling Han was furious. Lu Yutong was only his little female attendant, but Hunyo was treated by him as family. Moreover, Hunyo was still so young, so she naturally received even more love from Ling Han. Even he could not bear to say a few harsh words to her, but now she had actually been severely injured by Yan Tianzhao and was lying on the ground. How could he not be furious? Ah! He roared in fury and drew his sword. In that moment, he had forgotten everything else, and there was only the thought of beheading Yan Tianzhao. Shua, 7 flashes of sword chi lit up. Chapter 208. A mere first layer of poly, and yet he was so arrogant. Could it be that he thought he was in gushing spring tier after exchanging a few blows with Feng Yan? Nangongxing did not believe it at all. He only thought that the crowd had parroted and spread false information, thus forming such an absurd rumor. Poly tier against gushing spring tier. Pay. Nangongxing said coldly, since that's the case, then don't blame me for being impolite. You've sheltered a criminal wanted by the academy, so your crime is the same. I'm the captain of the 3rd small team of the discipline committee, and I'm under orders to capture him. If anyone dares to stop me, I have the right to kill him. Lu Yutong stepped forward. She thought that Ling Han had failed to break through and his cultivation level had fallen to the 1st layer of poly, so how could she allow Ling Han to fight against an elite in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tier? Ling Han laughed, lightly pushed her to the side, and said with a smile, didn't you see that even Brother Guang didn't step forward? What are you so anxious for? This little trash, I can easily take care of him. That's right, just leave this little trash to this brat, Guang Yuan said carelessly. Guang Yuan said carelessly. This brat is a bit strange. No, he's very strange. He had always felt that there was something off about Ling Han. Although he indeed only had one origin nucleus, for some reason, the feeling that Ling Han gave him was far beyond that of element gathering tier. Hearing him say so, Lu Yutong finally calmed down and obediently retreated to the side. She believed that with the power of an elite of spiritual ocean tier, even if Ling Han was in danger, she would be able to save him in time. Zhu Wujiu still wanted to hold his head high and take responsibility for his own actions, but he was slapped to the side by Ling Han, and could only look at Ling Han with a resentful gaze. Your subordinate is too insensible. Don't you see that I'm about to show off my prowess? Your brother Guang is much smarter, Ling Han scolded jokingly. Pay! Guang Yuan immediately spat. He was just too disdainful to make a move. He could really suppress a junior in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tier with a single finger. But when Ling Han said that, it became a sign of obedience, which made him so angry that his nose became crooked. Are you done yet? Nangongxing gritted his teeth. This was Huyang University, a place where the Law Enforcement Association had the highest authority. These two people actually dared to joke around in front of him. They were really looking down on him. You're in such a hurry to get beaten up? Fine, bring it on. Ling Han crooked his finger. Ling Han, this matter originally had nothing to do with you, Nan Gongxing said coldly, but you just had to stick your nose in other people's business. People like you usually die very quickly. It's none of your business. Ling Han gave him the middle finger. Fuck. Nan Gongxing was finally unable to endure it any longer. He fiercely flew out and stabbed out with his sword. The cold light was like lightning as it shot towards Ling Han's chest. Ling Han smiled faintly and casually grabbed out. Nan Gongxing seemed to be cooperating with him, and the sword was instantly caught by Ling Han. Huh? Everyone was shocked. With Nan Gongxing's ability in the third layer of gushing spring tear, his sword should be like lightning. Ling Han couldn't even see its trajectory, let alone catch it. However, what use was there in catching it? The power of the third layer of gushing spring tear was poured into the sword, and with a light shake, it could cut off all 5 of Ling Han's fingers. You're courting death. As expected, Nan Gongxing humphed coldly and was about to turn the sword. But his expression immediately changed, because the sword in his hand seemed to have grown roots in Ling Han's hand. No matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't move at all. How was this possible? A mere first-layer poly, how could it possess such terrifying power? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I'll give you a piece of advice. Put down the sword, or you'll suffer. Hang, as long as the sword is, the man is, and if the sword dies, the man is. Nan Gongxing still wanted to put on a brave front and say a few beautiful words, but suddenly screamed and hurriedly let go of the sword. His palm was completely red, as if it had been burnt. This was because Ling Han had used the strange fire and transmitted the high temperature through the sword. Thankfully, there was a sword between them, or else under the direct burn of the strange fire, his palm could have been burnt into charcoal. Nan Gongxing glanced around, and everyone looked at him strangely, causing him to blush involuntarily. He stared at Ling Han, and said, Ling Han, must you protect this person? Is there a problem with your ability to understand? This is my younger brother, and he's under my protection. If you want to challenge him, then I won't interfere, but if you want to use some unfair method to bully my younger brother, then don't blame me for being impolite, Ling Han said. This person crippled my younger brother, shouldn't he be punished by the academy? Nan Gongxing said sternly. Then you can only say that your younger brother deserved it. You should know about the grudge between him and Nan Gongji. If you want to take revenge, that's fine. Zhu Wujiu can accept your challenge, but if you want to bully him, then scram. Ling Han said coldly. Ling Han, you're making an enemy out of Huyang University. Nan Gongxing's face was livid, and he said word by word. Ling Han shrugged, and said, so what? No matter how many elites come, Big Brother Guang Yuan will deal with them. Hey, when did I say that I would help you fight against the elites of Huyang University? Guang Yuan hurriedly waved his hands. Big Brother Guang is really modest, isn't it just a matter of extending a hand? Ling Han said with a smile. Guang Yuan, however, kept shaking his head. Huyang University had an elite of spiritual pedestal tier watching over it, he'd be crazy to fight against such an existence. Nan Gongxing, however, knew that he couldn't take down Zhu Wujiu now, and said hatefully, this matter won't be settled so easily. Ling Han, even if the academy doesn't pursue this matter, my Nangong clan will not let this matter rest. Are you threatening me? Ling Han's expression turned cold. So what if I am? I hate being threatened the most. Ling Han walked towards Nan Gongxing. Towards these kinds of people, I've always beaten them until they submit. Aren't you a little too confident? Nan Gongxing sneered. Just now, I don't know what trick you used, but after I've suffered once, I definitely won't fall for a second trick. Is that so? Ling Han drew his sword, just in time to test the power of Black Origin sword technique. Hopefully, he could still control it as he pleased, and not cripple Nangong Xing with a single strike. Give me a sword. Nangong Xing stretched his hand behind him, and someone immediately drew his own sword and handed it to him. He twirled the sword, and said, I'll show you the power of my Nangong clan's 7 Wonder Sword technique. Ling Han laughed, and raised his sword horizontally. The tip of the sword was slightly lowered, and instantly, multiple ripples spread out from the tip of the sword. It was as if a pebble had been thrown into a lake, creating multiple layers of ripples. The ripples spread out, and Guang Yuan's originally indifferent expression immediately became solemn. Then, his expression changed drastically, becoming incomparably shocked. He hadn't seen the true power of this sword technique, but merely the sword aura that it displayed made him feel as if a storm was brewing. Once it was unleashed, it would definitely be earth-shattering and extremely terrifying. What kind of sword technique was this, and it actually appeared in the hands of a martial artist of polytier? Sweat immediately appeared on Nangong Xing's face, which then continuously rolled down his face. His body trembled, as if he was about to collapse. Chapter 209. He had yet to unleash his sword, yet he had already subdued his opponent. Nangong Xing didn't even dare to move. He felt that if he made the slightest abnormal movement, he would incite a thunderous storm of attacks from his opponent, which he definitely wouldn't be able to block. This kind of realization made him feel despair. His opponent was just a mere polytier, how could he force him into such a miserable state? Ling Han unleashed his sword. Shua, 9 streaks of sword light soared into the sky, like the rising sun, dazzling and dazzling. Nangong Xing's body was instantly sent flying, crashing onto the ground with a bang. Fresh blood seeped out from his chest. Guang Yuan's eyes widened. He clearly saw this sword. Ling Han's sword actually unleashed 9 streaks of sword light, and every sword light was condensed from spiritual energy to form a sword of origin energy. This was a little shocking, but it wasn't unacceptable. What was shocking was that the might of every origin energy sword reached the level of Ling Han's full power. In other words, in that instant, it was equivalent to 9 Ling Hans attacking Nangong Xing together. How was Nangong Xing supposed to block this? He couldn't help but think, if it were him, how would he block this attack? The answer instantly shocked him. He could only rely on strength that far surpassed Ling Han's, and use a large area of effect attack to send Ling Han flying, avoiding a direct confrontation with this attack. In other words, in a battle of the same cultivation level, he simply couldn't block this sword. How could it be so terrifying? Cough, cough. Nangong Xing fell onto the ground and continuously vomited blood. This sword attack of Ling Han was already lenient, but it still heavily injured him. The others were all speechless. Was this really a polytier 1? Could a polytier 1 also be so ferocious? Ling Han sheathed his sword and said indifferently, "Bring him away, don't stand here and be an eyesore." Nangong Xing vomited another mouthful of blood. So in Ling Han's eyes, he couldn't even be considered as an opponent. He was carried away by the crowd, and his eyes were fixed on Ling Han. This is not going to end so easily. Not at all. Young Master Han. Zhu Wujiu didn't know what to say. Though he was very touched by Ling Han's protective action, in his opinion, it was a meaningless thing, because how could a polytier rival Huyang University? He had indeed violated the Academy's rules. If you rely on your own strength to act violently, of course I won't help you. Ling Han looked at him and said seriously, "But Nangong Ji deserved it, so I support you in this matter." Zhu Wujiu clenched his teeth. If the Academy were to blame him, he would definitely shoulder all the blame on himself. He would definitely not implicate Ling Han. Guang Yuan was amused. In his previous impression, Ling Han was a rich nouveau riche, waving his money around until the earth and water faction could only bow their heads. However, from the looks of it, this guy was still a hothead. He even dared to confront Huyang University head-on. Was Huyang University something that the Earth and Water faction could compare to? However, this guy seemed to have very powerful connections. Even the Imperial Guards had to give him some face, so it didn't seem like he was completely messing around. He couldn't help but smile. This youth was very interesting, and he wanted to see what Ling Han would do next. Ling Han suddenly turned his head to look into the distance, and saw a young man walking over. His left shoulder was empty, obviously missing an arm. In Huyang University, there were only 2 people who were missing an arm, Feng Luo and Ken Yi. However, Feng Luo was missing a right arm, while this person's right arm was perfectly fine, so there was only one possibility. One of the 3 core disciples of Huyang University, Ken Yi, the disciple personally taught by Lian Guangzhu. Teacher and master, these were completely different concepts. Teachers received a salary from the academy, guided students in their cultivation, and taught things that were common to the academy. As for masters, they would carefully pass down their entire life's knowledge, and their relationship was as close as a father and son. Lian Guangzhu only had one disciple, and that was Ken Yi, a crippled youth. Ken Yi walked over slowly, carrying a long saber on his back. His gaze was as sharp as an exceptional treasured saber that had been unsheathed, giving people a feeling that even if a large mountain blocked his path, he would be able to cut it apart with a single slash. He has the bearing of a grandmaster, Guang Yuan said in surprise. The other's cultivation was not worth mentioning, but that aura made even him a little moved. Ling Han nodded as well. He also felt that this youngster had the potential to become a grandmaster of saber arts in the future. He had experienced this feeling from the Sword Emperor and the Setting Sun Saber Emperor, but Ken Yi was too inexperienced now, and only had this kind of sign. That strike just now was very strong. Ken Yi looked at Ling Han, his gaze filled with a strong fighting spirit. You want to fight me? Ling Han broke into a smile. This guy was not bad, and he already had the thought of subduing him. Ken Yi thought for a moment, and said, if I were to face this move now, I only have one chance of dispelling it. He paused, and said, if I think for another 3 days and research a way to dispel it, I should have a 30% chance. He was quite honest. Then, after 3 days, we'll fight again. Ling Han said with a smile. Ken Yi shook his head, and said, your cultivation is too weak. I can cut you in 2 with 1 slash, and you won't have the chance to use that strike at all. This could be considered honest, but it was too honest, making people uncomfortable to hear. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, how about we make a bet? Bet what? Ken Yi asked. Let's fight, and if you can't defeat me, you'll be my lackey from now on, Ling Han said. You can't possibly be my match, and will only be killed by 1 slash, Ken Yi said with a cold but certain tone, as if it was an emotionless saber. That's not for sure. Ling Han smiled, and said, let's fight, and if I'm killed by you, that's my fate. If I don't die, you'll be my lackey. This Ken Yi made him think of the Setting Sun Saber Emperor. Perhaps one day, this guy could really become the second Saber Emperor. Ken Yi thought for a moment, and said, once I attack, I'll never be lenient, and you'll really die. I'm not afraid of death, so what are you afraid of? Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, come, be my lackey. Ken Yi looked at Ling Han with a puzzled gaze. No matter what, the latter had no chance of survival. He was naturally cold, not only indifferent to socializing with others, but also indifferent to life. In his eyes, a person's life was no different from a dog's. Since that was the case, he didn't continue speaking, and drew his saber. With the long saber in hand, his temperament immediately changed greatly, turning from a cold and crippled youth into a god of death. That cold gaze, that threatening killing intent, even Guang Yuan revealed a hint of shock, and couldn't help but flick his fingers, having the urge to eliminate this youth because he felt danger. Ling Han, Lu Yutong called out lightly, a bit nervous. Meanwhile, Hun You's eyes shone. Kenye's pure killing intent made her feel a hint of familiarity, but when she discovered that this killing intent was directed at Ling Han, the little girl immediately shone fiercely, and growled at Kenye. "No no, this opponent is mine," Ling Han said with a smile, and brandished his long sword with a solemn expression. Kenye was indeed very strong, and even he had to treat him with caution. Chapter 210. The killing intent that Kenye exuded was almost tangible, and even the most resolute person would have goosebumps. However, his eyes were extremely clear, as if he was a pure infant, merging the two contradictory qualities together. This was because he was a natural saber user, drawing his saber only to kill all enemies and reach the supreme pinnacle of saber arts. Such a temperament, Ling Han felt it from the setting sun saber emperor. It didn't mean that Kenye would definitely become the second setting sun saber emperor, but at least he had such potential. If he could be nurtured like the setting sun saber emperor, but if he stayed in rain country his whole life, then the spiritual pedestal tier would definitely be his pinnacle achievement. Ling Han's sword moved very slowly because he was resisting Kenye's killing intent, and sweat involuntarily dripped from his forehead. In a battle of the same tier, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious, not to mention that Ling Han's tier was much lower, so he was naturally under great pressure. But the more it was so, the brighter Ling Han's eyes became, as if they could shoot through the sky. These two lunatics, monsters. Guang Yuan was secretly speechless, and such a thought rose in his mind. If his cultivation was suppressed to the same level as the two of them, he definitely wouldn't have the courage to fight either one of them. Just the aura he exuded was enough to make people despair. Kenye never lied. Shio, he moved, striking with his saber. The cold light was like water, sprinkling towards Ling Han. As expected, he wouldn't give Ling Han the chance to accumulate power and use that sword move. In his eyes, as long as he drew his saber, that person was an enemy, and against enemies, he would go all out and completely destroy them. That was death. His eyes were still clear, without a hint of killing intent, but the saber he brandished was like the god of death, brandishing a sickle to reap human life. Ling Han decisively did not continue to unleash his sword technique, because he would at most be able to unleash a third of it before he would be sliced in half at the waist, and his blood would splatter everywhere. However, this was all within his expectations. He opened his left hand, and a flash of black light surged out, actually forming a curtain of cloth in front of him. Then, it wrapped around his whole body, forming a sphere. Bam! The saber slashed down, but the black sphere was incredibly tough, and actually did not split open. However, under the powerful shock, this sphere was sent flying high into the air along with Ling Han. Shio, the sphere in midair suddenly changed, rapidly opening up, actually turning into a large umbrella, and the momentum of the fall was greatly reduced. Ling Han was like a flying immortal, slowly descending from the sky and steadily landing on the ground. The big black umbrella immediately retracted and turned into a ring on his hand. Wah! Ling Han still spat out a mouthful of blood. Even though he'd used the blood-sucking origin gold to ingeniously deal with this strike, he'd still suffered an extremely strong shock force, causing his internal organs to tremble, and it was extremely uncomfortable. In comparison, Kenye was really much stronger. Previously, a single strike from Ling Han was able to defeat Nangong Xing, but now, he couldn't even take a single strike from Kenye. Although Kenye's cultivation level was higher, reaching the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier, it could also be seen that this young man's attainments in the path of the saber. That worked too. Guang Yuan and Lu Yutong's eyes widened. Even with their eyesight, they couldn't tell what method Ling Han used to deal with Kenye's attack. What kind of spirit tool was that? It looked so awesome. Ling Han quickly recovered. He had the body of dead tree, and had the indestructible heaven scroll circulating within his body. As long as he wasn't killed, any injury could be quickly healed. He smiled, and said, "Little brother Kenye, do you still want to fight?" Kenye stood with his saber in hand, but closed his eyes. After thinking for a while, he opened his eyes, shook his head, and said, "No, I can't deal with that move of yours just now." Although he admitted that he couldn't deal with it, his expression was very calm, as if there was no joy in victory, and no sorrow in defeat, so calm that it was scary. "Then from now on, you're my little brother," Ling Han said with a smile. He'd gotten himself a little brother with boundless prospects. Not bad, not bad, he should be rewarded. Can Yi thought for a while, and said, "When I can deal with that defensive move of yours, I'll challenge you again. If you win, I'll continue to listen to your orders, or else you'll lose your life." "Fair." Ling Han cracked a smile. Kan Yi nodded, and said, "Then I'm leaving. If there's anything, blow this whistle, and I'll come as soon as I hear it." He waved his hand, and threw a whistle at Ling Han. Ling Han caught it, and couldn't help but have a strange expression. Was he born in the year of the dog? He could even use a dog whistle to summon. "Brat, you're so despicable, actually using such a shameless method to deceive a saber path genius." After Kan Yi left, Guang Yuan immediately jumped up and pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han pushed his hand away, and said, "What do you mean deceive?" "Deceive your sister. I used my true strength to convince that brat. If you're not convinced," Guang Yuan laughed, and said, "So what if I'm not convinced? Could it be that you want to fight with me as well? If you're not convinced, the main door is right there. Go out and turn right, I won't see you out," Ling Han said lazily. Guang Yuan instantly lost his temper. He still had to rely on Ling Han to guide his cultivation of the Great Sun Heaven Heart Scripture, and the Great Sun Heaven Heart Scripture he obtained wasn't even complete, so he still counted on Ling Han to help him complete it. If he went out and turned right now, then everything would be for naught. "In any case, I'm a spiritual ocean tier elite, shouldn't you respect me a bit more?" he said faintly. Ling Han instantly wanted to vomit, and said, "Brother Guang, don't be so mushy." Guang Yuan laughed loudly. He wasn't a spiritual ocean tier cultivator from a great clan, but a lone cultivator. He was flexible, and definitely wouldn't care about his face. Otherwise, if it was a spiritual ocean tier cultivator from a great clan, he would definitely leave in a huff after being mocked by Ling Han just now. Immediately after, he sighed, and said, "That brat just now was really not bad, a natural martial art genius. Unfortunately, he used a saber, or else I would really want to take him as a disciple. Fortunately, he didn't use his fists, or else if you really took him as a disciple, you would definitely be beaten into a pig's head by Lian Guangzhu," Ling Han said with a laugh. Guang Yuan was shocked, and said, "That brat is Lian Guangzhu's personal disciple? As if he's not." Guang Yuan was startled at first, then he suddenly jumped up, and was about to strangle Ling Han's neck. "You're an extremely daring guy, you actually tricked Master Lian's personal disciple into becoming your lackey. If Master Lian found out about this, he would definitely cut you to death, and even I would be implicated by you." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Don't worry, when the time comes, I will definitely push all the blame onto Brother Guang. Who would believe that I, a first-layer poly, would have such ability?" Guang Yuan only wanted to roar towards the sky. In the confrontation with Ling Han, it seemed that he had never gained the upper hand, and was instead led by the nose by the opponent. His expression was strange, and he said, "You really are a first-layer poly?" "As if I'm not." Ling Han smiled faintly. "Damn, if I believed your words, then I'd really be a pig." Guang Yuan spat. Chapter 211. The Rain Emperor acted swiftly and decisively. A mere 2 days later, the Empress's edict was passed down to the 7th Imperial Prince, while the eldest Imperial Prince and the 3rd Imperial Prince were transferred to the borders to stand guard. Their Feng residence was taken back, and it was obvious that they were going to die of old age beyond the Great Wall, and would never be able to return to the Imperial City in their lifetime. This was very much in line with the Rain Emperor's domineering personality. He would either not make a move, or once he did, he would show no mercy, even if it was towards his own son. The eldest imperial prince and the third imperial prince thus withdrew from the political stage of Rain country. No matter how powerful and influential they had previously been, in front of true imperial power, they were so weak that they did not even have the slightest ability to fight back. They could not even bargain and find a quiet place to retire. But this also ensured the smooth transition of imperial power. Without the eldest imperial prince and the third imperial prince stirring up trouble, the seventh imperial prince's position as the emperor was naturally as stable as Mount Tai. Moreover, the Rain emperor's previous domineering move had also left an impression of invincibility in the hands of the 8 great clans. Even if the seventh imperial prince was still young, and was only an element-gathering tier, who would dare to show disdain towards him? The Rain Emperor was a fierce man who even dared to beat up a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier of the Winter Moon sect, and had even forced a warrior of Flower Blossom tier to retreat. Though the majority of the people were not willing for the Rain Emperor to abdicate his position, after all, the Rain Emperor had just displayed his domineering personality, and was like a god in everyone's eyes, who could influence the thoughts of such a ruler. The new emperor's ascension was set to take place 10 days later, but Ling Han could not wait until that day. After he finished dealing with the remaining matters in the imperial city, he set out to return to Grey Cloud Town. This time, he went to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall after careful consideration, because if he wanted to restore Ling Dongxing's spirit base, there was no remaining Samadhi medicine left in Rain country. Only in a vast place like the North region would it be possible to obtain the remaining Samadhi medicine. After all, it was an ingredient used to concoct an Earth-grade mid-level alchemical pill, and even a great clan like the Winter Moon sect would view it as a treasure. Guang Yuan, Zhu Wujiu, Ken Yi, Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, Zhu Hexian, and Qi Zhantai went with him. Hu Niu had already woken up, and was completely fine. She was very lively and energetic. As expected, she could eat, sleep, fight, and could even take a beating. What a little monster. Niu is not a little monster, Niu is a little demon. Hu Niu giggled, and even gave Ling Han a peck on his cheek, causing Li Xichan and Lu Yutong's pretty faces to turn green. After the forced marriage, Lu Yutong was completely disappointed in her clan, and wholeheartedly wanted to follow her master. Li Xichan's reason was much better, to follow Ling Han and learn alchemy. However, her comprehension ability in alchemy was indeed not bad, so Ling Han did not object to her following. Ken Ye's reason was even simpler. He would follow Ling Han according to their agreement, until one day he could defeat Ling Han. When Zhu Hexian heard that Ling Han was going to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, he naturally eagerly followed along. Among all the alchemists here, his relationship with Ling Han was the closest. After all, he had only become friends with Ling Han when he was at his weakest, so their friendship was much deeper than that of the others. Thus, Ling Han did not mind giving the old man a few more pointers. However, Zhu Hexian's talent was limited, and his limit in this lifetime was only that of a black-grade high-level alchemist. Even so, Zhu Hexian was extremely excited. In Rain country, this was a big boss of alchemy. Qi Zhantai was completely a bystander. One moment, she said that she wanted to follow Ling Han to learn alchemy, and the next moment, she said that she wanted to return to the Yuan city to visit her relatives. In any case, she was following him around like a piece of sticky candy. However, Ling Han decided that when they reached the Yuan city, he would definitely get rid of her. After all, they were not familiar with each other. 5 days later, they returned to the Yuan city. They first left Qi Zhantai in the care of the De Yuan king, who had returned early, and then they went to Grey Cloud Town. The Ling clan had long since been rebuilt, and was now the only great clan in Grey Cloud Town. However, Ling Dongxing was not overbearing in the way he did things. Although he controlled the businesses of the whole Grey Cloud Town, the Ling clan would still leave some soup for the other smaller clans. Thus, the relationship between the Ling clan and the other clans was still quite good. When Ling Han returned, Ling Dongxing was naturally overjoyed. Moreover, The De Yuan king had returned early, and had already brought back the news that Ling Han had become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, not only was the Ling clan happy, the whole Grey Cloud town was also in an uproar, and they all came to congratulate him. That was a black-grade high-level alchemist. In the past, there had only been 2 in the whole of Rain Country, and in De Yuan City, they were even more awesome among awesome. Even the De Yuan king would have to pay his respects and address him as Grandmaster when he saw him. Good, good, good. Ling Dongxing was so excited that tears were flowing out of his eyes. He had long since known that his son was not someone who would be stuck in a small pond, and that this trip to the imperial city would definitely allow him to soar to the skies. However, he had never imagined that his son would be able to soar so fiercely and soar so high. He only hugged Ling Han tightly, and continuously patted Ling Han's back, choking on his sobs, unable to say a single word. For so many years, he had always thought that his son was a piece of trash, causing him to feel extremely ashamed towards his wife. Now that his son had finally soared, he felt that even if he were to die now, he would still be able to face his wife in the future. Ling Han took out the food from the Black Tower. There was naturally no need to mention the vegetables and fruits, but he could also choose some cattle and sheep to slaughter. After handing them over to the chefs to be processed, the moment they were brought to the table, just the fresh aroma alone was enough to cause everyone's eyes to stare blankly, and they almost drooled. Nios. Hunyo pouted very stingily, but she could not object to Ling Han, so she could only open her small mouth and eat with all her might. Her thinking was very simple. If she could eat everything into her own stomach, then she would not be at a loss. The little girl made a clean sweep of the food on her table, and then ran to another table to slaughter, causing all the guests to disregard their pride and fight for food with all their might. Ping, ping, pang, pang. The courtyard was filled with the sounds of chopsticks colliding with plates and chewing. These things were really too delicious. No one opened their mouth to speak, afraid that if they missed a bite, it would all be gone. This was not a blind worry. Everyone looked as if they had been starving for 3 days and 3 nights. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they wanted nothing more than to strangle the necks of everyone at the same table and make them stop so that they could eat to their heart's content. It's over, it's over. Such delicious food, after eating it once, they would not be able to forget it. How would they live if they could not eat it in the future? Ling Han left behind a lot of food ingredients for the Ling clan. In any case, the space inside the Black Tower was ridiculously large, forming a world of its own. Not to mention the Ling clan, even if the entire population of Rain Country were to move in, with the vegetables and livestock grown inside the Black Tower, it would be enough to ensure that they would not starve to death. In just a few days' time, the Black Tower had already harvested quite a few batches of vegetables. New seeds were sown, and they were growing in patches. Moreover, in the Black Tower, Ling Han was a godlike existence. Harvesting and sowing, he only needed a thought to do it, and there was absolutely no need for him to do it himself. Ling Han still asked Ling Dongxing if he wanted to move into the Black Tower. This way, he could guarantee the absolute safety of the Ling clan. However, after careful consideration, Ling Dongxing still decided to stay in Grey Cloud Town. This was the root of the Ling clan, not to mention that not too long ago, the blood of many members of the Ling clan had been spilled here. Ling Dongxing was even more unwilling to leave, and vowed to build up the Ling clan to a better state. Ling Han naturally would not force him. He kept almost all of his silver notes, and then concocted a large amount of low-level alchemical pills. With these 2 things, it would be difficult for the Ling clan not to become stronger. The bank was run by the imperial family of Rain Country, and these silver notes would be nothing more than waste paper outside of Rain Country. Who would allow you to exchange them for real money? Thus, Ling Han only went to exchange them for some gold and silver to bring along with him. Having a starting capital was enough. Moreover, the popular currency in the vast lands was not gold and silver, but origin power crystals. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 212. Ling Han saw a fragment of that great battle in the shards of blood-sucking origin gold, and he was sure that the giant of origin gold was definitely defeated. In his previous thoughts, the giant should have been dismembered, with shards everywhere. But there was another possibility, such as that giant of origin gold was only partially shattered, and the majority of its body was still intact. If so, then it wouldn't be strange that the giant of origin gold was suppressed in the mystery realm, and parts of its body appeared in Rain Country. Of course, this possibility was very small, pitifully small. But thinking of the scariness of the giant of origin gold, Ling Han still decided to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. If the giant of origin gold was really suppressed below, then he had to ensure that the seal was strengthening, and not being undone. So many years have already passed, so even a monster like the origin gold giant should have already died, right? Ling Han comforted himself like this. However, for an existence like the origin gold giant, even if it had truly died of old age, its indestructible body could still give birth to a second life. It was just that it would be a completely different person. No matter what, he definitely had to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. How do we enter the Devil Sky mystery realm? He asked. Very simple. After the mystery realm opens, teleportation doors will appear in various places, and after passing through, we'll directly enter the mystery realm, Lu Yutong said. Lu Yutong said. She paused for a moment, then continued, the reason why we know that the secret realm has opened is because this door has already appeared. Rain Country discovered 3 doors this time, and the one closest to us is 300 miles east of the Imperial City, Li Si-chan said. Ling Han nodded, and asked, in the Devil Sky mystery realm, aside from the blood zombies, what other dangers are there? The humans inside are all dead, but there are still some demonic beasts, and they seem to be trapped inside, unable to be brought out. And we can't stay inside for long either. We'll be rejected, and after a certain amount of time, will be automatically expelled from the mystery realm, Lu Yutong answered. It is said that there is a terrifying existence in the depths of the arcana. That is a forbidden area. We are just wandering around the periphery. After such a long time, the arcana has finally reappeared. There must be a large number of spirit herbs that have matured. That is our main target, Li Si-chan said. Lu Yutong also nodded her head in agreement. Cultivation methods and martial techniques had been plundered by the generations, and it was almost impossible for them to be left behind. However, it was different for spiritual grasses. This time, they had harvested a batch, and the next harvest would be at least a few decades later. Especially this time, it had only reopened after 300 years. There would definitely be a lot of spiritual herbs waiting to be harvested. What about the entry restrictions? Ling Han continued to ask. In short, the lower the cultivation level, the easier it is to pass. However, it is not certain every time. Sometimes, spiritual pedestal tier martial artists can enter, and sometimes, even gushing spring tier martial artists cannot pass, Lu Yutong said, shaking her head. Ling Han thought about it and felt that it was fine. Firstly, he had not offended any powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier. Secondly, if spiritual ocean tier martial artists could also enter, then he had Guang Yuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those below gushing spring tier could enter, then he was completely unafraid. Even if he encountered elites like Qin Yi and the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to protect his life. Moreover, wasn't Qin Yi his underling now? Not long after, Huyang University made an announcement, telling all students to immediately set off and enter the Devil Sky mystery realm. Going to the central hall to carry out the blood sacrifice was the first priority. If there was not enough blood zombies would come out to wreak havoc in the world, and who knew how many people would die. Very soon, Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun, and the others all ran over to Ling Han. They were all from the Yuan city, so they naturally had to form a group and help each other. Brother Ling, your cultivation level. Qi Yongyi was the first to notice and could not help but be shocked. How did it drop to the first layer of poly? Jin Wuji and the others all sensed Ling Han's aura. It indeed looked like there was only one origin nucleus, and they all revealed expressions of disbelief. They had only heard of people being stuck at a certain stage and unable to break through, but this was the first time they had seen someone's cultivation level drop so drastically. Ling Han laughed, and naturally would not explain. He said, "Since everyone is here, let's set off." Qi Yongyi and the others also knew that Ling Han's awesomeness was actually in the field of alchemy. In De Yuan City, he was able to make 3 black-grade alchemists bow down to him, and now he was even more awesome. Even black-grade middle-level alchemists had to kneel down and lick his boots. In this way, did it matter if Ling Han's own cultivation level was higher or lower? They set off, and Ling Han even made a trip to Tianyiji to call Li Hao. Only then did the group leave the imperial city, heading east. On the way, there were more and more people. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm was not only related to cultivation techniques, spirit herbs, and other good things, but also required a large number of people to use the blood sacrifice to prevent the blood zombies from coming into being. Thus, no matter what ability you had, it was best to send in some fresh blood to contribute. This was a matter of national importance, and the power of the imperial family was already effectively activated, mobilizing personnel from various cities to advance towards the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. Half a day later, Ling Han and the others arrived at the location of the teleportation door. Rather than calling it a door, it would be more appropriate to call it a vertical whirlpool. There was a black halo spinning around it, and it was about 10 meters tall, looking very majestic. This teleportation door did not have a front or back, and no matter which side one jumped in from, the person would immediately disappear, as if they had been swallowed alive. Ling Han nodded internally. In his last life, he did not have such a method, and it would require a great elite of the Shattering Void tier to do so. Some people had already entered impatiently, while others were still waiting outside, as if they wanted to form a group and wait for a large group of people to enter together. And before everyone entered, they would be branded with a mark and given a map. The mark represented the people of Rain Country, and the map was very simple, only marking the location of the central hall. The 9 nations of the desolate north could all enter the mystery realm through various teleportation doors, and it was not just the citizens of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country shared a border, and conflicts often broke out. After thousands of years, who knew how many people had died, and they were already mortal enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. This mark was used to distinguish enemies, and was directly branded on the back of one's hand. It could last for almost a month, which was more or less enough. And this time, the teleportation door's suppression was not particularly strong. Spiritual Ocean Tier warriors could also enter, but Spiritual Pedestal Tier warriors could not. Ling Han. A voice that was gnashing his teeth was heard, filled with endless resentment. Ling Han turned his head, and couldn't help but have a strange expression. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the fate of a cockroach? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his 2 arms were indeed reattached, but they were obviously not nimble anymore, as if they were forcibly glued on, swinging on both sides of him, which was very strange. After all, it was already not bad to be able to reattach his arms, and if they were still nimble, it was practically illogical. Chapter 213. Hi. Ling Han waved his hand in greeting. Feng Luo already looked like he wanted to eat someone alive, and seeing this, he could not help but fume even more, wanting to rush over and strangle Ling Han to death. However, firstly, he was not strong enough, and secondly, he could not even raise his hands. If he used too much force, they might just fall off, so he could only huff and puff angrily. Ling Han, if you dare enter the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, that will be the day of your death, he said through gritted teeth. Behind him, the 4 guardian deities all took a step forward, revealing disdainful expressions. After not seeing each other for over a month, these four people's cultivation level had all increased by a level, and they had all stepped into the second layer of gushing spring tier. The higher one's cultivation level, the harder it was to break through. For a genius like Lu Yutong, who had 3 meridians, cultivated a heaven-grade cultivation technique, and had Ling Han's supply of alchemical pills, it would only take her about 2 months to advance one level. What ability or virtue did these four people have to actually be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Lu Yutong? Ling Han thought of Feng Yan. This guy's cultivation level had advanced rapidly. Could it be that he had found an ancient treasure trove, and even the people around him had been enlightened by it? The four guardian deities all glared at Ling Han fiercely. Previously, even when the four of them worked together, Ling Han still managed to kidnap Feng Luo right under their noses. Fortunately, even Feng Yan had not been able to save Feng Luo's arms when he personally appeared, which lessened their sin by a little. However, this still caused them to lose a great deal of face, and they hated Ling Han to the core, wanting nothing more than to tear him into pieces to wash away this humiliation. And the mystery realm was obviously a good place to settle personal grudges. That place was too big, and there would always be times when one was alone. Once they met, moreover, people from the 9 nations of the desolate north could enter, so even if they killed Ling Han, they could completely blame it on the martial artists of other nations. Ling Han smiled, but his eyes were exuding killing intent. The first time he had met Feng Luo, he had only taught him a small lesson because the other party had not revealed any killing intent. He had not thought that this cockroach would actually have such a long life, and was also so annoying. Hunyo stuck out her little tongue and made a face at Feng Luo. She bared her little canine teeth, a look of disdain on her face. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, "Feng Luo, even my Nyo isn't afraid of you. I don't know what you're so cocky about." Qi Yongyi and the others also laughed loudly. Feng Luo was so angry that he was trembling. He gritted his teeth and said, "Ling Han, I swear that I will kill all of your family and friends in front of you, one by one, and only then will I target you." Ling Han's face immediately darkened, revealing a monstrous killing intent. He didn't mind playing with this kind of small fry. After all, he could casually trample him to death. However, the other party actually threatened to kill his family and friends. His strongest attribute was to protect his own people. "You're courting death." He strode towards Feng Luo. "Ling Han, you're tired of living." The four guardian deities all laughed coldly. In the previous battle, it was only because they had underestimated Ling Han that they allowed him to seize Feng Luo as a hostage and force them into a corner. However, this did not mean that Ling Han's strength was enough to stand against them. After all, a polytear was only a polytear. "Get lost, you stinking bugs." Ling Han said coldly. The killing intent he exuded was almost tangible. The four guardian deities all revealed angry expressions. "This time, you don't have a hostage in your hands, so what do you have to stand against them? Kill him! Kill him!" Feng Luo cried out involuntarily. As Ling Han drew nearer, he could not help but recall the few times he had clashed with Ling Han. He had been scared away, sent flying with a kick, and had his teeth knocked out. In the end, even his 2 arms had been chopped off. Seeing Ling Han's slender figure nearing, he instantly had a mental breakdown. "Kill him! Kill him!" he cried, tears and snot streaming down his face. This kind of disgraceful behavior caused the four guardian deities to look down on him, but who asked him to be Feng Yan's brother? They all stared at Ling Han with menacing eyes. This was a very good opportunity to strike. "Today, the one who will die will only be you," Ling Han said. His figure moved, and he actually charged towards the four guardian deities. "How dare you!" The four guardian deities all rebuked him angrily. This brat had already fallen into their hands once. Did he want to try again? Did he think they were idiots? Ling Han, Qi Yongyi and the others all exclaimed in shock. They had not thought that he would be so ferocious, going head to head with 4 powerful warriors of gushing spring tier just like that. Hung, 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 hung. 4 attacks shot out at the same time, blasting towards Ling Han. This time, the power of the 4 guardian deities had all increased by 1 star. The 4 of them working together could definitely kill any 9th layer polytear in an instant, no matter how much of a genius he was. However, Ling Han was not at the peak of polytear. Instead, he had transformed 9 into 1, and caught the one that had escaped. 10th layer polytear Ling Han used the exiting cloud steps, and his figure was like a ghost as he miraculously broke through the combined attack of the 4 guardian deities. In a flash, he had already appeared in front of Feng Luo, and stretched out a hand to grab Feng Luo's neck. "Save me!" Feng Luo screamed. The 4 guardian deities were both shocked and furious. They could not imagine how Ling Han had managed to break through their combined attack, and a single thought rose in their minds: it was likely that history was about to repeat itself. Indeed, they were 1 step behind, and were completely unable to stop Ling Han. They could only watch helplessly as Feng Luo was taken down by Ling Han. "Quickly release young Master Luo." The 4 guardian deities all shouted sternly, but they did not dare to attack again for fear of harming Ling Han. This scene was very familiar, causing their faces to burn as if they had been slapped in the face by someone. They had suffered a setback in the same ditch twice. Could it be that they were all pigs? Of course not. This was because Ling Han was now even stronger than before. Ling Han completely ignored the 4 guardian deities. He only stared at Feng Luo and said darkly, "You want to kill my entire family. Ling Han, you won't dare to kill me. If you have the guts, then cripple my arms. My brother will definitely save me anyway. Just you wait, as long as my brother returns, I will definitely kill your entire family." After his fear reached its peak, Feng Luo decided to throw caution to the wind. He stared back at Ling Han with a fierce gaze. "Come on, cripple me again if you have the guts. If you don't make a move, then you're a fucking grandson. Ling Han, I'm not afraid of you. You have no idea what kind of power my brother has mastered. It's rain." Pooh! With a crisp sound, Feng Luo's head suddenly disappeared. Ling Han had forcefully slammed it into his chest. After a while, fresh blood could be seen gushing out from his neck. All around, there was dead silence. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, "The world is quiet now. Young Master Luo." The 4 guardian deities shouted in unison, but without Ling Han's strength, Feng Luo's legs swayed a few times, and he instantly collapsed to the ground. His head had already been stuffed into his chest. How could he still be alive? Unless he really was a cockroach. "Murder! Murder!" Seeing this scene, someone shouted. However, although there was a large number of Imperial guards here to maintain order, there were even more people coming over. It was chaotic everywhere, and for a while, not a single Imperial guard came running over. "You killed young Master Luo. When Master returns, he will definitely tear you into pieces." The elephant guardian deity shouted harshly. "You speak as if my relationship with Feng Yan is very good." Ling Han shrugged, completely not taking this threat to heart. Chapter 214. What's going on here? A few Imperial guards finally arrived, and when they saw the headless corpse on the ground, their expressions changed. They were responsible for maintaining order here, and now that a person had died, it was hard for them to explain. "Sirs, this person has killed someone in public. Please arrest him." The 4 guardian deities pointed at Ling Han. When the Imperial guards saw Ling Han, their faces couldn't help but twitch. They naturally knew who Ling Han was. Their superiors had repeatedly ordered them not to get into conflict with this person. But this brat was too troublesome. How could he dare to kill someone in public? Ling Han scoffed, and said, "First, I have to correct one thing. This is not the Imperial City. It is very normal for us martial artists to have conflicts in the wild. Just now, I had some conflict with that idiot, but that idiot was too weak, and was finished in a single blow. Everyone was stunned. Indeed, this was not the imperial city, but 700 miles away. However, the people around them were from the imperial city, and there were imperial guards controlling the scene, so they didn't know how to react. It was very normal for fights to occur in the wild. Every year, countless people in Rain Country died because of this, and if everyone was investigated, Rain Country would probably be finished, because every party would be involved in such fights. But the logic was right, so why did it feel so strange? Don't cause any more trouble, or we'll arrest you, and if you dare to resist arrest, we'll kill you. One of the imperial guards finally concluded. Support. Ling Han raised his hand. He had already killed the person he wanted to kill, and now it was time for the 4 guardian deities to go crazy. He had no intention of making a move at all. The 4 guardian deities wanted to vomit blood. Wasn't this targeting them? Let's go, enter the mystery realm, and wait for Lord to return, the wolf guardian deity said in a low voice. This time, when Lord returns, he will bring with him supreme authority. Even if the current Rain Emperor appears, he won't be able to protect this brat. The tiger guardian deity nodded. Enter the mystery realm, the elephant guardian deity said through gritted teeth. They didn't know if Feng Yan would take it out on them after they failed to protect Feng Luo again. Just thinking about it made them shiver. The 4 guardian deities entered the mystery realm, and instantly disappeared. Only then did Qi Yongyi and the others heave a sigh of relief. They discovered that their foreheads were covered in cold sweat and their bodies were cold. Brother Ling, you're too daring, Bailey Teng Yun said with lingering fear in his heart. It's just a bug. So what if I trample it to death? Ling Han said indifferently. Of course, Feng Luo is nothing to be afraid of, but Feng Yan. Qi Yongyi had only just started the conversation. Right now, who did not know that Feng Yan was like the sun at high noon? In the academy, he could practically do whatever he wanted with a single hand. Just the thought of forming a death feud with Feng Yan was enough to frighten others. Hey, little Ye. Ling Han suddenly waved to the back. Qi Yongyi and the others all turned their heads, only to see a one-armed young man with a single saber. He was like a sovereign of the heavens and earth, exuding an unparalleled aura. Anyone who stood before him would seem incomparably small and insignificant. Can Knight but little Ye? Everyone's expressions were strange. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relationship between these 2 men that could not be revealed to others? Can Yi walked over, and did not express the slightest bit of objection or discomfort towards Ling Han's way of addressing him. In his heart, there was only the existence of the saber. So what if the world slandered and slandered him? With one slash of the saber, peace would be restored. All right, our people are all here. Let's go, Ling Han said with a smile. When can Yi become one of them? Qi Yongyi and the others all clicked their tongues in wonder, but did not say much. Instead, they closely followed Ling Han's footsteps and walked towards the teleportation door. As for Feng Yan's troubles, they would deal with them later. Xiao, everyone passed through one by one. Ling Han carried Hunyou, and the instant he passed through the whirlpool, he felt as if his soul was about to be torn apart. Time seemed to have lost all meaning, as if it had stopped forever. Before he could finish his thought, he had already appeared in an unfamiliar world. The green grass was like a carpet, as if it was an ocean. A light breeze blew past, and the green grass swayed slightly, as if a light wave had blown past. There was an indescribable sense of beauty to it. However, aside from Hunyou who was in his arms, the surroundings were completely empty. There was not even a shadow of a ghost in sight. Random teleportation. Ling Han frowned. After asking so many questions, this was the only thing he had not asked about. In the end, their previous meeting was completely wasted, and there was not the slightest bit of meaning. Thankfully, Hunyou had been hanging on to him the whole time. Otherwise, who knew where the little girl would have gone? Without his control, with this little girl's ferocious nature, who knew what kind of trouble she would cause? Wah! Hunyao jumped down from Ling Han's body, and began to run madly with all four limbs. She had grown up in the forest, and this kind of world was the sky that truly belonged to her. Ling Han walked in front, while Hunyao ran happily. One moment, she was in front of Ling Han, and the next moment, she was behind him. One moment, she was on the left, and the next moment, she was on the right. Even Ling Han was affected, and he could not help but smile. Danger! He suddenly felt a sense of danger, and abruptly leaped up, leaping towards Hunyao. Xiao, a snow-white little thing suddenly leaped out. It turned out to be a rabbit, and was currently nibbling on the grass. Because Hunyao's running scared it, Ling Han even thought that some enemy had come. He smiled and stopped, but Hunyao's eyes lit up. She immediately grabbed the ground with all four limbs and chased after the little rabbit. Her small mouth was wide open, and she continuously bit and bit. Obviously, Hunyao did not think the little rabbit was cute, but purely saw it as prey. Xiao, the rabbit ran very fast, but Hunyao was not slow either, and chased after it. Ling Han called out, but did not stop Hunyao, so he could only follow behind. In a short while, the rabbit burrowed into the grass, and disappeared. It turned out that it had run into a rabbit hole. Hunyao immediately waved her hands and began to dig, determined to catch this rabbit. Forget it. Although that guy is very fat, with your appetite, it's not even enough to fill the gaps between your teeth. Ling Han picked Hunyao up. The little girl was very unhappy, and pouted to express her dissatisfaction. Xiao, 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 xiao. It was at this moment that a lot of rabbits jumped out of the rabbit hole. However, these rabbits were not cute at all. They were as big as dogs, and their eyes were completely red, exuding a bloodthirsty aura. Fuck! Ling Han said in his mind, and could not help but look wary, because these rabbits were actually all in the poly tier, and there were even 2 in the gushing spring tier. 30, 40, 50, the number increased, and finally, a huge rabbit that was as big as a human jumped out, exuding a powerful aura of the late stage of gushing spring tier. People said that they had poked a hornet's nest, but now they had poked a rabbit's nest. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and he already had a rough idea: 1 late stage of gushing spring tier, 7 in the middle stage of gushing spring tier, 21 in the early stage of gushing spring tier, and there were as many as several hundred in the poly tier. I can't beat them, he immediately said in his mind, and hurriedly picked up Hunyao and broke into a run. If they could not win, they could just flee. This was the simplest thing to do. Chapter 215. Ling Han obviously wouldn't take it to heart. A dignified black grade high-level alchemist came to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. How could he be afraid of anyone? You. Chen Kai-fu saw Ling Han with a glance, and instantly, old and new hatred rose in his heart. He wanted to point a finger at Ling Han, but his right arm had just been reattached, so how could he raise it? The pain made him frown, and he could only raise his left hand to point at Ling Han. Such nerve! I was just about to go find you, and you actually delivered yourself to my doorstep. Ling Han frowned, and said, "Move your hand away, I hate it when others point at me." Ha 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 ha, you're about to lose your life, why are you still worried about other things? Chen Kai-fu snorted and snapped his fingers. More than a dozen people from the Star Defense Force instantly surrounded Ling Han. Zhu Hexian was instantly furious, and took a step forward, saying, "What do you guys want to do?" Black grade low-level alchemist. Chen Kai-fu saw the silver badge on Zhu Hexian's chest, and revealed a look of realization. No wonder you dare to oppose me, so you have a black grade low-level alchemist backing you up. Hey, but do you guys know who I am? Ling Han lightly patted Zhu Hexian's shoulder, indicating to let him come, and said with a smile, "I really don't know who you are." "Humph, you broke one of my arms. So what if you're a black grade low-level alchemist? I'm definitely going to kill you. Qin Kai Fu said sternly. He'd never suffered such great humiliation. Not only was his life threatened, he even lost an arm. Fortunately, he had countless high-level medicinal pills, which reattached his severed arm. Otherwise, he'd definitely hate Ling Han to the point of exterminating his entire clan. Kill these two, kill them both. He pointed at Ling Han and Zhu Hexian, and when he saw Hun Yo on Ling Han's back, he immediately said, "And this damn girl, young Master Fu." The people of the Star Defense Force were somewhat hesitant. After all, there was a black-grade low-level alchemist, so they didn't dare to act rashly. My brother is a black-grade high-level alchemist, what's there to be afraid of? Qin Kai Fu said with his head held high. Ling Han and Zhu Hexian came to a sudden realization. No wonder this guy dared to be so arrogant, so he had a black-grade high-level alchemist as his brother. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, a black-grade high-level alchemist could be called a big shot, and was indeed awesome. However, the awesome one was only his brother, not him. Judging from his age, his brother should be around 30 years old, so he does have some talent, Ling Han said to Zhu Hexian. Although alchemy was the same as martial arts, and the higher one's cultivation level was, the faster one's progress would be, a black-grade high-level alchemist in his 30s was still very shocking. Zhu Hexian thought for a moment, then said, "Could the one with the surname Qing be Qing Fei Jun? He is indeed a genius in alchemy. From what I know, he became a black-grade low-level alchemist 7 years ago, and was only 23 years old at that time. 2 years ago, he advanced a step further and became a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Although it was publicly acknowledged that he would definitely become a black-grade high-level alchemist, it has only been 2 years since he advanced, which is really unexpected. A 30-year-old black-grade high-level alchemist, too shocking, he sighed, then glanced at Ling Han, and could not help but laugh. In comparison, this guy was even more freakish. Ling Han immediately had a guess, and said, "It should be that Qing Fei Jun's luck is nature-defying, and he fused with a strange fire. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to become a black-grade middle-level alchemist in 5 years, and then leap to high-level in 2 years. Young Master Han is right." Zhu Hexian nodded in agreement. We. Qin Kai Fu stomped his feet in anger. These two actually minded their own business and talked, completely disregarding him, too infuriating. Kill them, kill them. Seeing that the people of the Star Defense Force were ready to make a move, Ling Han smiled and said, "I say, who the hell are you to command the Star Defense Force? Are you a black-grade low-level or a high-level alchemist? Old Zhu, you're a genuine black-grade low-level alchemist, these Star Defense Force should listen to you, right?" Zhu Hexian said, "I'm Zhu Hexian, I order you all to immediately retreat." He was still quite imposing, and under his furious gaze and berating, everyone in the Star Defense Force involuntarily took a few steps back. After all, the money for their meals was given by the alchemist, so they couldn't turn around and bite the owner, right? What's there to be proud of? My brother is Qing Fei Jun. When he sees my brother, he has to step aside and obediently call him master. Qin Kai Fu was not the slightest bit afraid, pointed with a finger, and said, "Kill them, I'll bear all the consequences." Under his stern urging, the people of the Star Defense Force once again took a step forward, ready to attack. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I originally wanted to give you a chance, but since you don't know how to cherish it, then I can only kill you." He sighed. Actually, he wanted to kill this young thug earlier, but he showed mercy because of the farmer's bitter pleas, because he didn't want them to be implicated. But now that Qin Kai Fu was seeking his own death, he wouldn't be lenient. Kill, kill, kill. Qin Kai Fu said sternly. The dozen or so people of the Star Defense Force finally attacked, attacking Ling Han and Zhu Hexian. However, Zhu Hexian still bore the title of a low-level black-grade alchemist after all, so the Star Defense Force vented most of their attacks on Ling Han. Hun Yo didn't see her attack, so who would take a little girl to heart? But they were obviously wrong. Seeing that they actually dared to attack Ling Han, Hunyo's ferocity instantly erupted. Xiao, she pounced out, turning into a streak of light. Pa, 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 she waved her claws continuously, bringing forth streaks of blood. Screams rang out, and the Star Defense Force fell to the ground one by one, all heavily injured by Hunyo. Fortunately, the little girl's ferocity was still the same, but her murderous nature was greatly reduced. She only dealt heavy blows, but didn't kill, so all the members of the Star Defense Force were still alive. What? Chen Kai-Fu's face was full of shock and disbelief. He knew that Hunyo was a bit strong, but to the extent that she could fight 1 against 10 was still greatly beyond his expectations. He hurriedly broke into a run. Behind him was the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, and there were many experts keeping watch inside. Casually asking a few of them would be enough to suppress everything. Usually, he couldn't command these people, but now that Ling Han fought his way to the entrance of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, how could these experts still look on helplessly? However, the moment he moved, someone already blocked him in front. Ling Han. People like you living in this world will only waste food, so you should just die. Ling Han's killing intent boiled. Hee, young man, don't be too hot-tempered, let's talk nicely. A friendly voice called out, and a middle-aged man who looked like a fat ball walked out from the main hall. His height was actually about the same. Captain Meng, quickly help me kill him. Chen Kai-Fu hurriedly called out. Meng Mao Kai. Zhu Hexian swept a glance over, and interrupted, this boy isn't a member of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, since when can he command the Star Defense Force? Grandmaster Zhu. The fatty nodded slightly at Zhu Hexian, then smiled bitterly. He's Grandmaster Cheng's younger brother, so even I have to give him face. However, I have to give Grandmaster Zhu face too. How about this, everyone put down their weapons and sit down to talk. Harmony breeds wealth, after all. Chapter 216. The Fire-Eyed Bull was a third-rank demonic beast. Its level wasn't considered high, but its eyeball was a treasure that could resist the cold. Therefore, it was extremely sought after by adventurers, and it could display miraculous effects when exploring cold places. Precisely because of this, the number of Fire-Eyed Bulls was pitifully low, causing the Fire-Eyed Bull's eyeball to be sold at a sky-high price. These people discovered the existence of the Fire-Eyed Bulls here, so it was inevitable that greed was aroused. However, the Fire-Eyed Bulls lived in herds, and if they charged in a herd, only spiritual ocean tier elites could stand against them. Obviously, there was no spiritual ocean tier existence in this group, so they had to think of a way to lure one out and kill it after it separated from the herd. These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. He smiled faintly, and said, "This place isn't owned by your family. I'm just walking, why would I take a detour?" You. That person was at a loss for words, but immediately glared at him and shouted, "If you don't get lost, I'll kill you." A mere first-layer poly dares to clamor. This person was only at the 7th-layer poly, but against a first-layer poly, he definitely had the power to suppress them. Ling Han sighed. He only had one origin nucleus left now, and it seemed like he was attracting a lot of hatred for him. He looked at the other, and said, "Are you sure you want to use force?" Rumble. Just at this moment, a black silhouette could be seen approaching at an incredible speed. Upon closer inspection, it was a black bull, but its eyes seemed to be burning with a ball of fire. In front of this bull was a martial artist. Obviously, it was as these people had planned, luring a fire-eyed bull out alone. Ling Han's heart moved. The strange fire in his left hand was jumping, sending him a vague thought, as if Hunyo was saying she was hungry. The strange fire seemed to be very interested in the two flames on the fire-eyed bull's eyes, wanting to devour them. Ling Han nodded, and sent a thought, saying, "If there's a chance, I'll get it for you." He didn't take it all on himself because he didn't know how strong this group of people were. Up until now, he had only seen 2 of them. Seeing that Ling Han didn't move, the person on the tree didn't say anything else but stared nervously at the fire-eyed bull. Attack! A loud shout rang out. More than 10 people jumped down from the trees and rushed out from the bushes. They just happened to surround the bull. Ling Han's gaze swept over them, and he began counting in his mind, 1 in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tear, 1 in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tear, 1 in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tear, and the other 12 are all in the poly tear. There should be no problem. The problem was the fire-eyed bull. The fire-eyed bull was a rank 3 demonic beast, but it was hard to tell exactly what rank 3 it was. Because demonic beasts and humans had different cultivation systems, it was hard to tell. But for Ling Han, his perception far surpassed that of normal people, and even spiritual pedestal tier elites might not be stronger than him. This fire-eyed bull seems to be in the late stage of gushing spring tear. The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. The late stage of gushing spring tear against the early stage of gushing spring tear was an absolute suppression. To make up for such a gap, 3 gushing spring tear martial artists were definitely not enough. Moreover, demonic beasts had thick hides and flesh, and martial artists of the same tier would find it hard to kill them, not to mention when there was a gap in tier. Unless, these martial artists had some secret treasure on them that could turn the tide of the battle. The martial artist on the tree naturally jumped down and joined in the siege. Ling Han didn't stand on ceremony and climbed up the tree, taking over the martial artist's previous position, and started a lively fight with Hunyo. The 15 people all took out their weapons and surrounded the fire-eyed bull. However, the fire-eyed bull also showed its ferocious side. It charged at those people and spat out fireballs from its mouth. It was extremely powerful. One of the people carelessly used his sword to block, but he was unable to split it apart. His chest was hit by the fireball, and a large hole was immediately burned in it. He immediately died. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the remaining 14 people changed drastically, and they became even more careful. But this fire-eyed bull was too strong. With the support of the late stage of gushing spring tear, it couldn't block it at all. The bull's horns collided and flew, and no one was a match for it. Rather than saying that everyone was besieging it, it was more accurate to say that they were being ravaged by it. Peng, 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 the poly-tier martial artists were like scarecrows, continuously being sent flying. Even if they weren't hit by the fireballs, being hit by the bull's horns was definitely not a good feeling. A few people's abdomens were pierced, and their intestines spilled out, a horrible sight. Senior Brother Ma, we have to use our ultimate move, the martial artist in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tear said. Fuck, the martial artist in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tear who was called Senior Brother Ma spat, and unwillingly took out a spirit talisman from his bosom, slapping it on his body. To hunt a fire-eyed bull, I actually have to stick a strength talisman on my body. I can't earn much money at all. The others were silent, because Senior Brother Ma only cared about how much money he could earn, and didn't care at all about those who died or were injured, which made them very disappointed. They weren't together, but had met Senior Brother Ma and his 2 companions on the way, and were coerced by them into joining the hunting party. But from now on, they were only bait, a tool to divert the firepower. The spirit talisman immediately came into effect, and Senior Brother Ma roared loudly. His body inconceivably expanded to at least double its original size. Pa, 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 the clothes on his body were immediately torn apart. Thankfully, it was unknown what material his underwear was made of, but it was tough enough that it actually didn't tear. Blood vessels popped out one after another on his skin, and his muscles were knotted, filled with a sense of power. The strength talisman was said to be able to create miracles with great power, because absolute power could indeed crush everything. The fire-eyed bull revealed a hint of wariness. This human made it feel a sense of danger. It stopped, and aimed its horns at Senior Brother Ma, its front hooves continuously pawing the ground. Die! Senior Brother Ma roared angrily, and waved the metal rod in his hand, smashing it at the fire-eyed bull. The fire-eyed bull was obviously a brute force type, and dodging was definitely not its forte. Thus, when faced with this rod, it had no intention of dodging at all, and raised its two metal horns to receive the attack. Bang! The metal rod smashed against the bull's horns, causing a series of sparks to explode. The fire-eyed bull's front hooves were actually forcefully smashed into the ground, all the way to its body. The metal rod also bounced upwards, causing the web between Senior Brother Ma's thumb and forefinger to split open, and fresh blood instantly spurted out. Ling Han saw this, and couldn't help but shake his head, thinking to himself that these two idiots had actually used their strength in the most idiotic way possible. But idiots against idiots, that was also good. In a head-on clash like this, victory and defeat would be determined very quickly. The fire-eyed bull's hooves exerted force, and it immediately leapt out. But after this head-on clash, it became even more wary, and didn't dare to launch another attack. Instead, it stared cautiously at Senior Brother Ma. In the demonic beast's ideology, survival was the most important. Attack together with me, and exterminate this beast. Senior Brother Ma said sternly. He needed the others to create an opportunity for him to attack. Chapter 217. No one wanted to make a move, because Senior Brother Ma had already used up a strength talisman. This thing was very valuable, and would not be much less than the value of a fire-eyed bull, so even if they took down the fire-eyed bull, the big head would definitely be taken by Senior Brother Ma. How much could the others get? Who would risk their lives for a mere few hundred taels of silver? However, they had no choice but to do it. Senior Brother Ma was glaring at them fiercely. Whoever didn't do it would be killed by Senior Brother Ma first. There was no law here. Everyone had no choice but to brace themselves and charge forward. However, each and every one of them was even more careful. They didn't dare to be hit by the bull's charge or get hit by the fireball. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they would lose half their lives. Although they were weak, they could at least divert some of the fire-eyed bull's attention. Senior Brother Ma took advantage of this opportunity to attack. Peng, 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 the great battle began once again. Right now, Senior Brother Ma was strong enough to fight against the fire-eyed bull. In addition, he had nearly 10 helpers, so he naturally had the upper hand. After being hit on the waist and back by Senior Brother Ma, the fire-eyed bull revealed a look of fear. It wanted to run away. However, Senior Brother Ma and the others had paid such a huge price, so how could they allow this prey to escape? Naturally, they did their best to stop it, and not long after, the fire-eyed bull was riddled with wounds. The demonic beast knew that it was impossible to escape, so it revealed a vicious expression and gave off a determined aura. It was going all out. The fire-eyed bull has an innate secret technique, 10 directions incineration. It explodes the source of fire power in its body at once, and its lethality is extremely terrifying. However, this will also cause the source of the fire-eyed bull's firepower to collapse, and it might never be able to recover, Ling Han muttered. N. Hunyo sat with a serious expression, continuously nodding her little head as if she understood. However, it was clear that Senior Brother Ma and the others did not know that the fire-eyed bull had such a powerful move. Everyone, let's work harder. This bull demon is almost at the end of its road. Although the bull's eye is the most valuable, if it gives birth to a calculus bovis, then the value will be even greater. Go all out. If anyone dares to slack off, I'll make them regret it later. Under the strict orders of Senior Brother Ma and the other two, everyone could only increase the intensity of their attacks and create more opportunities for Senior Brother Ma to attack. Boom! A wave of raging flames suddenly gushed out from the fire-eyed bull's body and shot out in all directions. It was as if tens of thousands of fireballs were fired at the same time. Apart from retreating, there was no way to dodge. However, the speed at which the flames spewed was too fast. Only senior brother Ma and the other two were able to escape the range of the flames in time. The others were all burned to ashes. Even so, there were many places on senior brother Ma and the other two's bodies that were scorched black and charred. They were in an extremely sorry state. When this big move was unleashed, the fire-eyed bull immediately did not even have the strength to stand, and fell to the ground with a bang. Damn it! Damn it! Senior brother Ma cursed as he cried out in pain. I'll have to waste a lot of medicinal pills to heal my injuries again. This time, I really won't be able to earn anything. In any case, I managed to take down this bull demon. Another person said with a smile. He walked up and stabbed his sword into the fire-eyed bull's head. The four limbs of the bull demon instantly spasmed, but it soon stopped, ending its life. However, I still have to deal with one more person. Senior brother Ma carried his rod and walked towards the big tree where Ling Han was. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he said, "Brat, you think I didn't notice a rat like you?" Ling Han smiled. When he walked over, he did not hide his tracks, and even spoke with someone for a while, so the people in the surroundings would naturally notice him. What was there to be proud of? So many people have died, and you still think you can escape? Senior brother Ma sneered, and swung his rod to strike. Peng, the metal rod smashed onto the tree, and the big tree was instantly broken. The huge tree collapsed, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Ling Han leaped up and landed on the ground not far away with Hun Yo in his arms. His eyes carried a hint of coldness, and he said, "There's no enmity between us, and yet you want to kill me? Who asked us to be injured? If you ambush us while we're healing, wouldn't we be in a very passive position? So, please die now." Senior brother Ma said coldly. Ling Han smiled, and said, "What makes you guys so confident that you've definitely got me?" Ha 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 ha. Senior brother Ma and the other two laughed loudly. A mere first-layer poly, you want to cause trouble? As expected, his current state was really attracting too much hatred. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I really don't want to show off, but I've decided to eat you 3 pigs. Impudence." A person shot out, and the sword in his hand shone with a cold light, slicing towards Ling Han. He was in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, and was also heavily injured, but against a first-layer poly, it was definitely something that could be killed with a single strike, so there naturally wouldn't be any accidents. Therefore, senior martial brother Ma and the other person were all smiling. Ling Han moved. Chong, his sword was unsheathed, and 6 flashes of sword chi shot out. What? 6 flashes of sword chi? Senior brother Ma and the other person exclaimed at the same time, but they immediately calmed down. No harm, no harm. Although 6 flashes of sword chi was shocking, Ling Han's tier was really too low. Even 10 flashes of sword chi couldn't make up for a whole 9 tiers difference. Pu, pu, the cold light was like a wash, and the flesh on the first layer of the gushing spring tier was sliced off piece by piece. When Ling Han's sword chi completely surged through, the person became a bloody mess. Fuck me. Senior brother Ma and the other person opened their mouths wide, and their eyes were even bigger than copper bells. This scene completely shattered their worldview. A first-layer gushing spring tier was actually instantly killed by a first-layer poly. Who would believe this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. You're definitely not in the first-layer poly. Senior brother Ma said through gritted teeth. Then what's my cultivation? Ling Han asked with a smile. Senior brother Ma couldn't say. That aura was definitely that of the first-layer poly, but if he compared it carefully, it was indeed stronger than a normal first-layer poly, but even if it was 10 times stronger, it was only equivalent to the middle stage of poly. How could it have the power to instantly kill a first-layer gushing spring tier? No matter what your cultivation is, you can only die. Senior brother Ma shouted. His strength talisman was still in effect, and he had the power of the late stage of gushing spring tier, which made him extremely confident. Hong! He waved his metal rod and attacked. Because his speed was too fast and his power was too heavy, wherever the metal rod passed, a whirlpool formed in the air. Ling Han smiled faintly and moved his feet. His figure instantly moved like a ghost. If Senior Brother Ma was truly in the late stage of gushing spring tear, then Ling Han would definitely break into a run at the first instant. However, Senior Brother Ma only used the strength talisman to increase his power, and his speed didn't change at all. Moreover, Senior Brother Ma was heavily injured by the Fire-Eyed Bull's last attack, and his power was greatly reduced. His power didn't decrease much with the help of the strength talisman, but his speed was far from his peak state. How could he hit Ling Han like this? Chapter 218. Senior Brother Ma shouted in anger. His opponent was still holding a child, but he couldn't do anything to him, which made him extremely depressed. As time passed, he became even more anxious. Firstly, the strength talisman could only last for about 10 minutes. Secondly, he was indeed injured, and very seriously, so he had to be treated immediately. Otherwise, the longer he delayed, the more serious his injuries would become. Junior Brother Yang, join forces with me and quickly take down this brat, he called out. Okay. The other person raised his sword and joined the battle. Two gushing spring tier elites actually joined forces to attack a poly tier cultivator. This would be despised to death. However, these two were obviously very thick-skinned and didn't care at all, only wanting to kill Ling Han as soon as possible. However, they discovered in shock that it was impossible to do so. Ling Han's figure was as slippery as a fish, making it impossible for them to catch him. They could only chase after him in vain, wasting their energy. And the longer they delayed, the more disadvantageous the situation was for them. Brat, what kind of hero are you if you keep dodging? Fight me head-on if you have the guts. Senior Brother Ma goaded. Are you an idiot? Ling Han humphed. You already said that you can kill me with one move, and I still want to fight you head-on. Do you think I'm stupid, or are you the stupid one? Damn it! Senior Brother Ma shouted in anger. However, I don't have the time to exhaust you, so come receive my sword. Ling Han's expression became serious, and the sword intent of the mysterious 3000 circulated in his heart as he began to prepare this move. Instantly, an oppressive feeling enveloped Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Yang. What sword technique is this? Senior Brother Ma immediately looked shocked. In his eyes, it was as if Ling Han had become the center of the universe, and everything else paled in comparison. Why can't I even move my body? Junior Brother Yang was about to cry. The other's sword was about to strike, but he couldn't even move his body, so wasn't he just waiting for death? Ling Han smiled internally. He used his divine sense to lock the two of them, and thus created the illusion that they couldn't move. This was an influence on their consciousness. Generally speaking, as long as one's willpower was strong enough, they would naturally not be affected. For example, with Kenye's concentration towards the path of the saber, even if Ling Han was still in the heaven tier, it would still be impossible to shake his determination. However, due to their heavy injuries, the willpower of these two people had already become extremely weak. Moreover, they were shocked by Ling Han's 6 flashes of sword chi and were shocked by the strange power of the first layer of element gathering tier, so their willpower was naturally greatly affected. Thus, Ling Han used the influence of the sword force of the 3 styles of black origin to create the illusion that they could not even move. Mysterious 3000 Ling Han unsheathed his sword. Shio, 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 shio. Dozens of sword lights shot out at the same time, condensing into poly chi to form sharp swords, shooting towards Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Lu. Under the pressure of life and death, Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Lu both broke free from Ling Han's mental pressure. At this time, it was already too late to escape, so they both brandished the weapons in their hands, doing their best to block the attacks. Peng, 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 peng. Every origin power sword was equivalent to Ling Han's full power attack, which was equivalent to more than 20 Ling Han attacking one of them at the same time. Who could withstand this? A few origin power swords were sent flying and shattered by them, but even more origin power swords pierced their bodies and tore their bodies apart. The destructive power was incomparably terrifying. Ling Han's figure flew over, his long sword making a circle. Pu, Pu, two heads were instantly sent soaring into the sky, and fell to the ground with a pa, revealing the faces of Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Mu, who were both unwilling and terrified. Ling Han panted, and said, "No wonder that guy, Sword Emperor, is so awesome. I only grasped 1% of this style's power, and could instantly kill 2 gushing spring tier elites." He looked pensive, and thought, if the Heaven's Sword sect is still around and knows that I learned the 3 styles of black origin, they probably won't let me go. A sect that could cultivate such a monster like Sword Emperor, would there be a shattering void tier elite overseeing it? I'd always thought that there was no shattering void tier existence in the vast lands, but now that I think about it, there might be such an elite that lives in seclusion. It's best to use the 3 styles of black origin less in the future, unless it's a matter of life and death, or it can be guaranteed that it won't be leaked. Meet. Just as he was thinking, Hunyo had already jumped out, and came to the fire-eyed bull's side, jumping non-stop. Although Ling Han bought a lot of beast meat, most of it was level 1, and there were very few level 2, not to mention level 3, so the little girl was drooling. "You glutton," Ling Han said with a smile. "Nyo is a glutton." Hunyo took this as a compliment, and nodded vigorously. Ling Han laughed loudly, and began to deal with this fire-eyed bull. The strange fire kept sending out ya thoughts in his left hand, already impatient to refine and swallow those 2 eyeballs. He lit a fire, cut off a leg of the bull, and roasted it on the rack. On the other side, he dug out the bull's eyes, and held them in his left hand. The strange fire surged out, and wrapped around the 2 bulls' eyes. The 2 bulls' eyeballs were actually shrinking at a very fast speed, and in a short while, they turned into ashes. Meanwhile, the strange fire shrunk and returned to Ling Han's left hand, sending him the thought that it wasn't full yet. 2 gluttons. Ling Han ridiculed inwardly, while comforting the strange fire, promising to find food for it in the future. In a short while, the bull's leg also emitted an enticing aroma. Ling Han took out a dagger, cut off the beef piece by piece, and placed it on a plate. This was the advantage of having a spatial ring. These completely impractical things could be carried around, since they took up very little space anyway. Hunyo immediately began to eat happily. She was the representative of the gluttonous type. She hadn't even eaten a piece of meat, and her small hand was already reaching for the second piece. Her mouth was filled to the brim, and even chewing was difficult. For the current Ling Han, the entire body of a level 3 beast was practically a treasure. The tough hide could be made into armor, something that even sharp weapons wrapped in origin power would find difficult to pierce. And the beef, bones, and tendons were all great supplements that could strengthen the body, comparable to some treasures. Of course, the most precious were still the bull's eyes and horns, but the bull's eyes had already been eaten by the strange fire, leaving only a pair of horns, which could be made into weapons that possessed great destructive power. Upon closer inspection, there were patterns that looked like characters on the bull's horns, and it was these patterns that gave the fire-eyed bull such great destructive power. Otherwise, this pair of bull's horns would only be hard for show. Ling Han ate the meat as he tried to activate these patterns. This was very difficult, since everyone's martial art was different, not to mention that this was an entire race. However, Ling Han was no ordinary person. Very soon, a pattern lit up, and then a second, and a third. A red light enveloped the horn, as if the bull's horn was burning. Ling Han waved lightly, and a flame shot out from the bull's horn, leaving a 3-inch deep scorch mark on the ground. Chapter 219. What did it mean to shock everyone? This was it. When everyone looked at Ling Han again, their gazes were filled with fanaticism. Even the three big bosses of alchemy were no exception. They put the 7 turns break crisis pill back into the jade bottle, and returned it to Ling Han extremely respectfully, as if they were a god. This was definitely a future king of alchemy, worthy of all alchemists prostrating themselves in worship. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I'm an earth-grade alchemist now, right?" "Yes, you must be." Yong Longzhang and the other big bosses all nodded repeatedly. Not only was he an earth-grade alchemist, he could even immediately become a medium or high-level earth-grade alchemist, awesome to the point of being muddle-headed. Ling Han looked at Cheng Fei Jun, whose face was already ghastly pale, and said with a smile, "Small Cheng, quickly pay your respects to this master." Cheng Fei Jun bit his lip so hard it was about to bleed. Now, even the 3 earth-grade alchemists acknowledged Ling Han's identity. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, how could he act shamelessly? But Ling Han had just killed his younger brother, so how could he kneel before Ling Han? If he knelt down, his life would be over. "Humph, you haven't gotten the alchemist's certificate yet. Just because you say you're an earth-grade alchemist." As expected, he still acted shamelessly. Yong Longzhang immediately revealed a displeased expression, and said, "Cheng Fei Jun, Master Ling just concocted the 7 turns break crisis pill. Didn't you see it with your own eyes? Moreover, the 3 of us can testify, yet you still doubt Master Ling's identity. What's the meaning of this?" Cheng Fei Jun clenched his teeth, and said, "Anyways, unless he can take out the proof of an earth-grade alchemist, I definitely won't believe it. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall here didn't have the right to issue the proof of an earth-grade alchemist. It had to be reported to the North Region's Alchemist Society headquarters first, and only after a series of steps could the proof of an alchemist be issued. Going through these procedures would take at least a month's time." Cheng Fei Jun took advantage of this, refusing to admit defeat no matter what. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin?" Daring to act shamelessly and barge into his territory, wasn't this courting death? He strode towards Cheng Fei Jun. "What, you still want to fight me?" Cheng Fei Jun sneered. His alchemy ability was indeed inferior to Ling Han's, but in terms of battle prowess, he wasn't the slightest bit afraid. He was in the 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Ling Han reached out and grabbed towards Cheng Fei Jun, impudent. Cheng Fei Jun snorted and raised his hand to counterattack. "Pa! How could a mere 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier be Ling Han's match?" He'd just raised his hand when it was suppressed by Ling Han. He couldn't help but widen his eyes, revealing an expression of disbelief. "Acting shamelessly in front of me, where do you get your confidence from?" Ling Han greeted him with a series of punches, causing Cheng Fei Jun to scream repeatedly. Everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to mediate. Ling Han was an earth-grade alchemist, and it was very possible that he would surpass Long Yong Chang and the others, becoming an earth-grade mid-level or even high-level alchemist. Who would be willing to offend him? Moreover, it was indeed Cheng Fei Jun's gambling behavior that was bad. He obviously lost completely, yet still stubbornly resisted, completely asking for a beating. After beating Cheng Fei Jun like a dead dog, Ling Han picked him up, smiled at everyone, and said, "I still have a score to settle with him. I'll be right back." Everyone thought that Ling Han was going to beat Cheng Fei Jun to his heart's content, and nodded hurriedly. Daring to go against a great alchemist, he deserved it. Ling Han carried the unconscious Cheng Fei Jun to an alchemy room. The walls here weren't transparent, and his figure immediately flashed, bringing Cheng Fei Jun into the Black Tower. In this space, he was a godlike existence, and stripping Cheng Fei Jun's strange fire was an easy task. As expected, a ball of azure flame immediately emerged from Cheng Fei Jun's body, and the strange fire in Ling Han's body immediately revealed excitement, sending a thought of "Yaya" to Ling Han, wanting to devour this ball of azure flame. Ling Han waved his hand, and the crimson strange fire instantly appeared, pouncing towards the azure flame without hesitation. The two balls of flames instantly started fighting. This was a battle between strange fires, and whoever won could devour the other, allowing their own body to grow, but the opponent would disappear forever. Ling Han couldn't intervene in such a battle, even if he was the master here. However, Ling Han's strange fire was nurtured from the body of a shattering void tier elite, and its grade was extremely high. Moreover, it was strengthened by the Black Tower, and its strength increased greatly, quickly gaining the upper hand. The two balls of strange fire began to fuse, and it was visible to the naked eye that the azure flame was disappearing, while the crimson flame became brighter and brighter. Ling Han made up his mind, and brought Cheng Fei Jun out of the Black Tower, casually tossing him to the side. If it weren't for the strange fire, he wouldn't stoop to the level of such a minor character. This time, he just happened to be going to be certified as an Earth-grade alchemist, and conveniently obtained a strange fire, so it could be considered a bountiful harvest. When he arrived at the main hall, Yong Longzhang and the others were already waiting there, all expressing their congratulations to Ling Han. Ling Han thanked them one by one, and then brought Hunyou back to the inn, agreeing to come back in a few days. He had to obtain the proof of an Earth-grade alchemist before he could leave, so he indeed had to stay here for a period of time. However, Yong Longzhang and the others promised to get Ling Han's proof of identity as soon as possible, and wouldn't make Ling Han wait for too long. Zhu Hexan told them about Ling Han's advancement to an Earth-grade alchemist, and instantly caused the people of Guangyuan Academy to be dumbfounded. Only a few days had passed, and Ling Han had advanced from a black-grade high-level alchemist to Earth-grade. How could anyone believe that? However, they immediately became excited again. Following an Earth-grade alchemist, would they still have to worry about not having enough medicine to eat in the future? Sigh, they were destined to become medicine containers, and let others be envious of them. They said that they wanted to celebrate with Ling Han, but in reality, they wanted to gorge themselves. After all, those fruits, vegetables, and meat that Ling Han brought were really too delicious, causing them to keep thinking about them. Actually, they had no idea that Ling Han owned a vegetable garden that could supply the entire Rain country. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such a request by chance. In their minds, these delicacies would definitely be incomparably rare. At night, in a secluded courtyard in the northern part of the small town, Cheng Fei Jun was dressed in black, appearing like a thief. He knocked 3 long and 2 short knocks on the door, and with a creak, the door opened. A 14 or 15-year-old boy appeared, but expressionlessly stepped aside, not saying a single word. Cheng Fei Jun's figure flashed, and he entered the courtyard. He walked quickly, and in a few steps, he arrived in the main hall. An old man with an unremarkable appearance was sitting and drinking tea. However, if one looked closely, his face was unusually pale. "Greetings, Lord Luo." Cheng Fei Jun hurriedly knelt down and saluted. His arrogant attitude had long since disappeared without a trace. "Report every 10 days, why have you come early?" The old man surnamed Luo spoke, his voice hoarse, revealing a hint of gloom. At this time, the boy also walked into the main hall and stood behind the old man. Under the light, one could clearly see his appearance. His face was red and white, indescribably strange. It turned out that he had put on some powder and rouge. Why would a young man put on some powder and rouge? It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.